they win something. Shit, I'll pay for everybody's con.
It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B, now on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2, and streaming live at arizonasports.com. The guys are powered by the law offices of Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck and need a check? Make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900. And now on your ESPN station in Phoenix, ESPN 620, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B.
Now, the Knicks force a Game 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals. The D-backs are looking to get back on track versus the Nationals, and the Stanley Cup is set. Welcome into another fine edition of Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B as we are out here at Wright Toyota. I'm Dan Manuch alongside Jackson Groff. Also back at the fine palatial ESPN 620 studios is Connor Collins. Jax, y'all dialed in. Anything in particular as you're prepping for? By the way, his last show here on Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B. Jackson Groff. That's right. The nerve of this guy to have to go get a real job. It's amazing. I mean,
only been here for almost 3 years, which is a short time, apparently, according to you, Roc and Jimmy B. But no, I'm excited, man. It's cool to be able to go out on a high note, do the show with you alongside Connor, and talking. Kind of, we're approaching June, the dog days of summer, and we're kind of looking for different topics and looking for different segments. And I know in hour number 2, us three being football fanatics, I'm looking forward to diving into the sounds of some of these players and Jonathan Gannon on what's going on at OTAs, because we haven't heard from these guys in a couple months. So it's cool to hear the perspective of Gannon and guys like Trey Benson and Darius Robinson, who maybe Darius Robinson, people always forget he was a first-round pick.
That's right.
He wasn't a second-round pick. He was a late first-round pick, and he always gets kind of, not mentioned with Marvin Harrison Jr. because of the gap between those two players. But I'm excited to kind of dive into that, get our reactions, and, talk a little football in the second.
All right, Connor, what do you got, buddy?
Oh, no, I was giving Jax a sounder there. He was making some great points.
You're hitting the ching.
This guy's woken
today. If I gotta jump in, I'll give you a ring. Don't worry. Yeah. You'll hear it.
We were chatting with Connor before and talking Cowboys. The guy got on a roll. We'll get into that too, as Big Micah Parsons could get paid big bucks. But let's take a look at what happened last night. A couple of big things. Big win for the Knicks to force a Game 6 with the 111-94 victory over that Pacers team last night in the Garden. I really felt, guys, I really did, that the Pacers would close this bad boy out. But the defense on Halliburton and the Catman was good to go right from the jump, pardon the pun, as they come out. They get after it, pretty much take the lead at halftime. Really never looked back, and the Pacers were never really a threat in this game whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it was interesting with Tyrese Halliburton, and we'll get into some sound in the next segment of Cat talking about how Jalen Brunson was guarding Halliburton. And I think that's one thing that's so cool about a superstar, not only on the offensive end where Brunson had 32 points, kind of a light night for him, I guess, but battling on the defensive end. And for Halliburton to only shoot 7 times, which tells you that he didn't really have any shot attempts and was kind of trying to feed the ball to guys like Nesmith and Turner. And that's one thing that Jimmy B mentioned on the show yesterday. It's kind of a make or miss playoff where we saw the Timberwolves Thunder. The Thunder were lightning and the Timberwolves couldn't make anything from the boat. And now last night it was like the Pacers, kind of a lower scoring game compared to the other ones we've seen in the series. They could not hit any shots. And because of that, you got to give credit to the Knicks. And could we potentially have Game 7 back in Madison Square Garden?
Well, Game 6 is tomorrow night, and I would love to see Game 7. Nothing against you Pacers fans. I really would love to see the Knicks win this thing in 7. I'd love to see the Knicks and OKC go at it, I guess, because, that old guard, that old school of that basketball from yesteryear when the Patrick Ewings of the world and the Mark Jacksons of the world, all those guys were making things happen there with the Knicks. And, but you go back to Indiana. It could be one of those. It could be another game where you blow them out by 15, 20 points. But what I saw, you bring up Halliburton and just getting guarded, just by Brunson just all over him. And you just said, only 7 shots on the day. And I watched him a couple of times. He looked, I don't know if he was hurt or he tweaked an ankle. He didn't look right to me last night. Or he could have been sick. I don't know. Or the defense could have made him about half sick. When you looked at his numbers, just 2 for 7, 0 for 2 from three-point land, he's usually hoisting at least, 8 to 10 3 points. So I just wondered without them saying that something was amiss. But then again, you got to give it to the defense. There's that Tom Thibodeau defense by the Knicks that we've been talking about that finally came to fruition in a must-win game last night.
I think one thing that's interesting, too, is one thing that's great about this going to Game 6 is we get another rendition of Inside the NBA on TNT, so that show continues to go on. But Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal have been all season, and maybe even like the last couple years with Karl Anthony Towns' game, they wanted to see him on the block as a big man because, yes, he's got the three-point ability, and he was 1 for 4 last night, and that's probably a good night for him to only shoot 4 times from beyond the arc, but 10 of 20 inside the paint. It felt like him and Mitchell Robinson were getting their own, and that's what you want to see from Karl Anthony Towns, the athleticism down low, and I think that is something that he's starting to develop and starting to listen to, and that's why you're starting to see him as such a dominant presence and a superstar in the NBA.
Well, you got Mikal Bridges you traded for, the Catman you traded for. You got Brunson there, so it's about time. You know, you talked about Charles Barkley and those guys talking at halftime about the dumb fouls that Catman had.
Oh, my gosh.
I love it.
So many.
That they call these guys out, and when you watch that game, you're going, what are you doing? You know, when you watch a Catman with these fouls, it's like move your feet. Don't you know you want to put him on the free throw line? Excuse me, give him any more opportunities, but I think Barkley and the crew per se really have been on spot on with a lot of their comments with both of these games.
Well, because he's so pivotal for him. You can see when Cat's out of the game, that gives the Pacers more opportunity with Turner or with the guys down low to kind of create their own, and that's when the lane in the paint opens up for Halliburton to even get his own as well too. So with Cat in foul trouble, and luckily Brunson last night only 2 fouls. He's another guy that has a bunch of dumb fouls. He's trying to hold back because he's such a pivotal point. But to your credit, Manuch, this Knicks team, I mean, we're led by Thibodeau. I'm excited to see them go back. I'm excited to see what celebrities also travel to Indiana. It's kind of a rivalry between the celebrities of who's going to go back and forth and go to these games. But it gives us something more to talk about. It gives us more basketball because, like you guys mentioned yesterday, we got to wait till Thursday for the NBA playoffs. And now with the Stanley Cup set, that's going to be on Wednesday. It gives us something to talk about, at least with a basketball that we can talk about till next week.
Well, something we'll be talking about on Monday is the D-backs are hosting the Nationals in a 3-game set starting tonight. Merrill Kelly 5-2 at the 3.52 ERA, taking on Jake Irvin, who's having an outstanding year for the Nationals, 4-1, is with a 3.42 ERA. The Diamondbacks have lost 8 of the last 11, 7 of the last 8. They have got to get back on track. You are 7 games back as far as the National League West. You're 7 games back of the wild card when you look at it. Not that this is our make or break situation, but I really believe the month of June is going to be a very pivotal situation for this team, for Torey Lovullo as the manager. Management gave Torey Lovullo the initial vote of confidence yesterday. That's one of those things. We're all in this together. We're going to make the kind of decisions, but you cannot, with the kind of pitching staff and the kind of talent and the kind of money these guys are making, lose 8 of 11, lose 7 of your last 8. They've got to get this thing turned on and start getting some clutch hitting, stop making key errors, and get this bullpen to shut down, at least win a series before they move on the road for a 6-game set starting with Atlanta next week.
So you follow more baseball than I do. Is it pretty much bullpen that's been the only issue, or is it defensive errors? Is it the batting? Because, Paul Skeens, elite pitcher. But for him to have 9 Ks against this D-backs team, who I thought had one of the best batting averages, top 8 maybe in MLB.
They were.
Is that what's been going on with this team? And I know you guys talked yesterday with Gallen. It's pretty much bullpen or bust, and this month of June is going to be a big test for them, what they decide to do with the trade deadline.
Well, I think one of the things they did, and I think we all kind of sense this, was Ginkle got sent back down after 2 out of his last 3 outings are really bad. They're about to bring him up, 33-year-old reliever. I don't know how they're going to use him. But to answer your question, it's been a combination of all the above. The hitting hasn't come through when it needed to. The bullpen has basically imploded, giving up big leads. You basically saw Zach Gallen have another implosion. You talked about Paul Skeens. So there's a lot of things going wrong with this team, but we did not see anything like this. Thinking at the very end of May, you thought, okay, they're within 3 to 5 games back because the Dodgers, and you go, okay, we see that. But with the San Francisco Giants that much having a better year than you so far, who are very quietly having a good year, kind of expect that with the Padres, who had like a 6 or 7 game slump, but they're back at it. So I think for now, it's one game at a time, but there's a lot of pressure on this team with all the hype that they've had going on. And last but not least, the Stanley Cup is set for the second year in a row. The Edmonton Oilers will take on the Florida Panthers. The Oilers crushed the Stars 6-3 last night to advance to the Stanley Cups. I think they start on Wednesday, so they'll be more than enough in reference to all that going on. In the National Football League, it looks like 2 of the top tight ends in the league may be on the move. Jonnu Smith of the Falcons to the Steelers, maybe. Now, how about Kyle Pitts? This one's a little surprising. He may be traded from the Falcons. A lot of rumblings. The general manager said they have had inquiries about him. And we're going to dive into this in the second hour. June 1st is the day of either cuts or trades, as it is the official New Year's start for the National Football League.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what these teams are going to do. Kirk Cousins is puzzling, and he's one of those guys where we all thought, when they made the move to Penix, which Kirk Cousins may go down as one of the worst contracts. Actually, Deshaun Watson was maybe second or third worst contract in the NFL. What they were going to do. Were they going to trade him during the draft? Were they going to trade him before or after? And he's been stuck there as the most expensive paid backup in the NFL.
And especially coming off the Achilles injury.
Yeah.
That was a bold move by the Falcons.
A horrible move. Well, they also kind of said, hey, we're going to have a backup plan with Penix, who was a shock to a lot of people in the league at the top 10 selection, which was a great pick by them because Penix seems to be like the guy moving forward. But he's a guy to me where you wonder where he ends up. Do they kind of just cut him? And does a team like the Vikings bring him back as a backup for a cheaper deal? Because I'm assuming the Falcons are going to have to eat up a bunch of money. Do the Steelers potentially grab him? And why is Aaron Rodgers not at OTAs, even though he's not on the roster for the Steelers, Manuch?
You know what? He should be there.
I think it's so funny how these pundits out there are talking about they're so mad that Aaron Rodgers isn't at OTAs when he hasn't signed to a damn team yet.
Oh, that's great. Hey, coming up in this hour, we'll catch up with Eric Williams of FoxSports.com. He's the NFC beat writer. Scott Spreitzer will satisfy the itch of one Jackson Groff as far as some of the games that he'll be handicapping. And then we'll catch up at 3:30, former Cardinal, Raider, and Detroit Lion linebacker, Michigan State extraordinaire, Rob Fredrickson, will also join us. Here, our State 48 Roofing, it's your call question of the day. State 48 Roofing, the number one referred roofer in Arizona, proudly serving the Arizona residential and commercial markets for over a decade. For a free quote, repair, or installation, head to state48roofing.com and follow them on social media by searching hashtag #SexyRoofStatus. Speaking of the Diamondbacks, with Zach Allen's pitching woes of late and up for an extension after this year, what should the D-backs do? Just go to @Roc and Manuch on Twitter or X. Number one, should they trade him or keep/pay the extension? So, again, just go to @Roc and Manuch on Twitter and get that question. We'll check in periodically. Well, it's time to rewind. It's your replay rewind as the Knicks force a Game 6. The Stanley Cup is set, and Pat Mahomes says he's not interested in the Olympic flag football team. That's all right here on Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B as we are live at Wright Toyota.
Love this one.
Now,
let it marinate for a second.
Rewind. The top sounds of the night and whatever Rock decides to add. Let's get to it in Replay Rewind with Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B on ESPN 620 and on FM at 98.7 HD2.
That is a Replay Rewind brought to you by Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck, need a check, make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900 and always online at lernerandrowe.com. Get your free consultation today. Again, that's 602-977-1900. Lerner and Rowe, they can help. Well, big game last night, as we talked about, as the Knicks force a Game 6 in 111-94 victory over the Pacers. And, Jax, we talked about this a little earlier. The guys they traded for, the guys that they hoped could turn this team, get them to a NBA title, get back to an Eastern Conference final. One of those guys is one of our former Phoenix Suns, that being Mikal Bridges, and here's his jumper in the third quarter.
Got 11 in the quarter. Bucket will go a long way here for New York. Yes, I'm up 15, but you need a little momentum with your big guns coming back in the fourth. Bridges into Shepherd for two.
Special thanks to TNT, and Reggie Miller just said it. They needed all they could get because of this hot shooting Indiana Pacers team who really, really struggled shooting. But I think more than anything, those kind of buckets toward the end of the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, really helped propel this Knicks team for that must-win game.
Yeah, and he hasn't been as consistent as we expected. When he went from the Suns to the Brooklyn Nets, he kind of took a launch of a huge jump offensively. I think he was averaging like 20, 25 points over there. Then he comes to the Knicks where you got Brunson, you got Cat. He kind of takes a step back as that third or fourth option offensively. And it seemed like in this game, only 12 points, but it felt like anytime the Pacers had some type of momentum to get it between 12 and 15, like Reggie Miller mentioned, Bridges was there to step up and make a big shot in that one. It just felt like the Knicks had the lead from the jump, and they didn't let off the gas for sure.
Well, as anytime you're in the Garden, it is very loud and very proud. And their chance at the end of the game, Knicks in 7 and 4th, hopefully comes to fruition in a couple short days.
Only looking to pass. Great job. Great attention to detail by the Knicks defense. It's Hart. Anunoby. Shot clock at 7. Setting up for 3. Rebound McConnell.
Yeah, you can hear him in the background. Knicks in 7. At that point, is 96-79. Pretty much had control of that game. I didn't see Indiana making any kind of a strong comeback at that point.
What a year for Madison Square Garden. I mean, you had the St. John's run they had. You had the Big East tournament. And then you've got the Knicks in 7. So they're hopeful they can come back, but they definitely got to win a big one. 4.5-point underdog, which Scott Spreitzer in the second hour for all you degenerates out there like myself. I'm looking forward to see what side he's going to go on there.
Well, the Cat Man, we talked about him coming up big these last couple of games, and here he is, as we mentioned, the defense, that being Jalen Brunson's defense versus Tyrese Halliburton.
I mean, obviously, he did an amazing job, and that's something that Cap always does. He always answers to the call. He answers the call every time. So, like I said, it's not just a him thing; it's all of us as a team. We win as a team, we lose as a team. I'm never going to allow Cap. He does so much for us, and we ask so much out of him every game. That he's never going to go out there and take all the blame. We all do. We're brothers, we're family. And family and brothers never let someone go out there and take all the blame. We all got to be willing to lose together and win together.
Yeah, I think in NBA TV, the Cat Man talking about the defense, really the shutdown defense of Tyrese Halliburton over Halliburton. Only 7 shots by Tyrese Halliburton. Well, we move on to the Stanley Cup. It's set. As it'll get set, get going on Wednesday. And once again, it'll be Edmonton taking on the Florida Panthers. Last night, the Oilers beat the Dallas Stars 6-3. Here's how it pretty much got the 2-goal lead for this Edmonton Oilers team.
Collective breath. Draisaitl played it off. Kane centers, and it bounces in. Looked like it hit Lindell out in front and wound up past the Smith.
Yeah, that's right. Lindell with the deflection there with that 5-3 lead, thanks to ESPN. And last but not least, nothing more, I should say, gratifying than to have the empty netter at the end of a game to win a conference title.
we have a rematch of last year's Stanley Cup final. And here it goes toward the empty net and in with 10.8 to go.
A little cherry on top of that Sunday as a final score, Edmonton winning that game 6-3. Connor McDavid talking about all things that are good about going back to the Stanley Cup.
It's been fun. Just did another interview. I said, how this year feels a little bit more normal, just been kind of status quo. It's been fun to be a part of. Hasn't been as emotional. Been very just kind of direct and, smooth and steady. It's been fun.
I wonder what the next little while will be like for you, how long you will enjoy this before you look forward to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you could tell me when the game is. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a long ways away. So obviously a lot of preparing to do. Going up against a great team. Stanley Cup champs from last year, third finals in a row. Not much you could say about them. They're great. We'll have our hands full, but we're a good team. We're a special team. And we feel good about our game.
You look at this two high-scoring teams, and again, thanks to Sportsnet on that, as Connor McDavid kind of puts a bow on it. By the way, Connor, you play Wednesday. You got 5 days off. You can heal up, get a few skates in, and get yourself ready to go back and do it once again. Matter of fact, Jackson and I were talking about till earlier about teams playing back-to-back titles.
I got the list for you, too.
Okay, the first thing that stands out in my mind, unfortunately, is the Bills playing the Dallas Cowboys back-to-back years, and the Cowboys winning both those games. I got to imagine there's been Lakers-Celtics several times.
Yep, 1984 and 1985 was back-to-back. And then your point about the Cowboys-Bills, that's the only time in the NFL that a true consecutive year Super Bowl rematch has happened. For baseball, you go back to the Cardinals-Yankees 1926 and 1928, or even the Yankees-Dodgers 1977, 1978, okay. And then NHL. Last time this happened was 2008, 2009 when the Penguins and Red Wings played. Red Wings got the first one. Penguins got the second one.
I will see where you mentioned Scott Spreitzer is going to join us here at 2:30. For all of you individuals that like to partake a little bit, I will not call you degenerate gamblers, but I'll call you partake. And kind of get the over-under in reference to both these teams can score and score a lot. So are we going to see 6-5 games? 4-3 games. Also catch up with Steve Peters, a former assistant coach with the Coyotes. He also helps with ESPN get his thoughts on that. We'll catch up with him on Tuesday.
2 minutes.
These teams can both score. They can light up the lamp like no other team.
Yeah, and you mentioned both can score quick, too. I remember Edmonton, the first game, they were up 3-0, and Dallas came back and won that game 5-3. And then since then, both teams, the Panthers, they were down 3-0 against the Canes, and within a matter of 30 seconds, they scored 2 goals. So to your point, Manuch, I think the over-under for the first game at least has got to be 9.5 goals.
It might be.
It sounds insane to say, but it's going to be a fun series watching Edmonton, and it's cool to see what Connor McDavid said last year, a lot of emotions of a Canada team coming back to the Stanley Cup, and now it's status quo because they're back in it.
Con, let's skip down to Pat Mahomes because this is interesting. We've been talking about this Olympic flag football team, which will be going in the 2028 Olympics. Long story short, he's my quarterback if he's going to play, but Pat Mahomes is saying he's not interested.
Yeah, I know it's awesome, honestly, just to be able to showcase the NFL to the whole world through flag football. But I'll probably leave that to the younger guys. I'll be a little older by the time that thing comes around.
I can't imagine him being as competitive as he is. Maybe he has another 2 Super Bowl rings by that time. Maybe his last thing to conquer, it would be for me, is to go get a gold medal in the Olympics as a quarterback. I got the Super Bowl rings. If I can go get that gold medal, I'd be all over this.
But Manuch, one, he's got a little beer belly on him, so I know he likes to enjoy his off season, get some beer, and go play some golf. But Pat Mahomes doesn't care about a gold medal. He wants to win multiple Super Bowls, get his body right. But yeah, it would be cool to see him in that setting. But I do think too for flag football, I think a Jaden Daniels, I think a Lamar Jackson, even what you want to say about Kyler Murray, those kind of dual threat runners, because you got to mention too in the flag football, there is a rusher coming at you too. So I think Mahomes, and I'm sure the Kansas City Chiefs, if they have to have one person from each NFL team represent for the Olympics, he's not the guy for him.
Coming up, we take a look at what's being worked on the most throughout the NFC West, and are the goals for the Cardinals in the OTAs going to be something they can rely on? But first, here's Connor with our Wright Toyota ESPN 620 right here on Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B, live from Wright Toyota on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2.
It's time for your Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B's Wright Toyota ESPN 620 update. I'm Connor Collins. It's a big night for Arizona sports as the Diamondbacks open a 3-game series against the Washington Nationals at Chase Field. Merrill Kelly's set to take the mound with a record of 5-2 and a 3.52 ERA, going up against Jake Irvin, who's been playing pretty good baseball as of late. He's got a 4-1 record and a 3.42 ERA. Arizona aims to build momentum after snapping a 5-game skid, and you can catch that first pitch at 98.7 FM Arizona Sports at 6:40 p.m. Meanwhile, in Tempe, the Cardinals wrapped up OTAs with quarterback Kyler Murray fully participating, and second-year wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. is turning heads, having added more muscle in the offseason and showing off strong chemistry with Murray. This update is brought to you by Wright Toyota, where they've got the right deal for everyone. Right on the corner, right on the price. Wright Toyota in Scottsdale.
I was in a wreck. I need a check.
I was in a
It's Friday, and the guys are live from Wright Toyota. Right on the corner, right on the price. Wright Toyota, located at 77th Street and Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard in Scottsdale. Now back to the guys on ESPN 620.
First down from the 22, and movement at the line, the Dolphins said. Evidently, Ryman did not. Murray to throw. Kyler Murray lets it rip. End zone! Harrison! What a catch! Man, oh man!
Thanks to Fox Sports. Cardinal fans are hoping to see that combination quite a bit. Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison was quite the catch. Well, a guy that covers the NFC West, he's a fine beat writer for at NFL on Fox. We get him on Pure Economy. Kind of give us the lowdown, the breakdown, the feel, the vibe of the NFC West, that being one. Eric Williams now joining us here on the right Toyota guest line. E-Man, it's Manuch alongside Jackson Groff. How are we doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, guys. Happy Friday. Look forward to talking the football here with you.
So OTAs, voluntary, mandatory minicamp next week. So when you go around and you talk to these head coaches and these players and general managers, what is what's the grind? What is the grit? What they want to get out of OTAs more so?
I think they want to get some of that installation done now, so that when they hit training camp, they're kind of going over stuff that they've already worked on during those OTAs and mini camps. So they're putting their installations in and trying to get as much information into those players as they can. And then obviously guys will have the playbook, during their time off, so that when they come back during training camp, they're just kind of polishing up what they learned during OTAs and mini camp.
So then minicamp next week, that's the mandatory piece. Does it become a little more intense, more structured, more organized? Because when I think of OTAs, organized team activities, there's a weight training, conditioning, bonding, go bowling, go watch a movie, go wherever to kind of bring it together. So is minicamp going to be a little more intense, a little more focused?
Yeah, that's been my experience, is things kind of ramp up a little bit. That's when it looks the most like football during the off season, when you have that mini camp, because you want to look good on offense and defense. I know when I was covering the Seahawks the first couple years that Pete Carroll was there, he really emphasized competition and urgency, and there was a lot of fights during mini camp, and they actually got a couple of practices taken away from them because they were going too hard during that period. So there's a balance that you have to strike as a head coach, because you want the players out there working hard and competing, but you don't want to cross that line.
I want to go to Seattle, Eric, because Sam Darnold's contract, it seems like a longer-term deal, but how it's worked, it's like a kind of insurance for them off of the first year. Is there some kind of pressure on Sam Darnold to kind of perform early, kind of like what we saw with Baker Mayfield going to Tampa, kind of revamp his career? And then my second question is, how do you see Jalen Milroe in this offense?
Well, to answer your first question, yes. I mean, the way that contract is structured, I believe they can get out after the first year with $55 million paid to him. So they want him to go out there and perform, like he did during the regular season with the Vikings last year. So there is a lot of pressure on Sam to go in there and lead that team, for a team that, won 10 games last year and moved off of Geno, who was traded to the Raiders, moved off of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, guys that were good players for that franchise for a decent amount of time. In terms of Jalen, I think they're going to kind of work him in slow. They obviously like the talent, the athleticism. They want him to get better as a passer. He's going to be the number 3 quarterback going in. Donald is obviously your starter. They brought back Drew Lock, who gives them an experienced number 2. And then Milroe will sit in and kind of learn from those guys as the number 3. That said, I know John Schneider pretty well from my time covering that team. He likes explosive athletes that can score from anywhere on the field. That certainly is Milroe. So I expect him to have a package of plays in the playbook for Milroe to get him on the field so he can have an impact, similar to how you saw Taysom Hill used by the Saints. And obviously that's where Kubiak came from, their new offensive coordinator up in Seattle.
So you cover the NFC West from a national perspective. When you heard that, surprisingly, Sean Murphy-Bunting out for the season before the season even started, do you think, or do you feel confident in the cornerback room that they have, or do you think that's kind of an added concern that maybe fans or people watching the Cardinals should have when you look at this Cardinals defense?
I think it's always a concern when you have a guy that you're expecting to be a starter and be an impact player in your defense, and then you lose them before you even get to the start of the regular season. They obviously drafted Johnson to come in and play meaningful minutes, even though he's coming off of an injury. I think that was a concern going in, was their secondary and how they would hold up, particularly at the corner position. And so I expect them to continue to look at the waiver wire, look at potential guys that can bring in free agency, maybe look at the UFL and see who kind of spins out of there that could come in and be a back-end roster guy. But you have to add as much depth as you can, and certainly a guy that you were expecting that was going to contribute for you. Losing him is going to impact their defense.
Is it known how he hurt the knee? We already hurt his knee. He's out for the year, obviously. But was it known how he did this, Eric, at all?
Yeah, I haven't heard if it was away from the facility or if it was, working at the facility. But the way that it's been labeled, I think it was an AL, right?
Yes.
In terms of how they. Yeah. So that's usually away from the facility. Players working out on their own. But I haven't heard the specifics in terms of how he injured it.
All right. So we look around the NFC. Brock Purdy gets extension. That's behind the 49ers now. They've extended or reworked Fred Warner's contract. I would think everybody and everything is in place at this point in time. Are there any other needs defensively, Eric, that they're going to try to build on during camp or prior to training camp?
Yeah, I just think they're going to be young. When you look at their defensive line and you look at their secondary, they didn't bring Hufanga back. They didn't bring Greenlaw back at linebacker. Travarius Ward signed with the Colts in free agency, so you need help at cornerback. Obviously, they're going to count on Renato Green, playing more meaningful reps for them. They still had Lenore there, who can play as a slot defender or play in the perimeter. But I think the focus is going to be, Mikael Williams and how he develops in terms of being a guy that can play opposite Bosa and maybe get you double-digit sacks. Is he going to be a guy that's going to be able to do that on a consistent basis? They make the trade for Bryce Hupp, with Philadelphia, so that gives them a situational pass rusher they can add to that group. And then I just think it'll be a matter of kind of coaching those young guys up so they can play to the full potential of that defense. Much like the Rams did a couple years ago when they moved on from Aaron Donald, and we thought, well, how are they going to replace Donald? And the defense actually played pretty well, with that young defensive line group. I think the Niners are looking to do something similar this year.
And let's move on. I want to move on to the NFC South. You wrote a great article on Tyler Shuck. Saints rookie quarterback Tyler Shuck ready for once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Just so you can find that on foxsports.com. Eric wrote a nice piece there. We've got Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck. By the way, thanks for the Vine for a couple comments on Tyler Shuck. How unusual is this be for a guy? You have Derek Carr retiring, and you've got two guys from the same city fighting for the same job.
Yeah. At the NFLPA rookie premiere up in Los Angeles last week, was really impressed with how grounded he was and how mature he was in terms of, his approach in that conversation. I think it's a big deal, the fact that he played at three different schools in terms of the resiliency and kind of building that into who he is as a player. He certainly looks like he has the athletic profile that can be a guy that can compete in the NFL. He's also married. I think that shows some maturity as well in terms of, what you're going to expect from your home life and having somebody there to support you when you're moving to a new city. So I think it's a good fit for him to come in there and battle for that job with Derek Carr, obviously retiring. It'll be interesting to see how he gels with Kellen Moore, who I know a little bit. I actually covered Kellen Moore in high school when I was back in the Seattle area. Really smart, offensive mind who's a son of a head coach in terms of, his upbringing in Washington State. But, not a lot of talent when you look at that Saints roster. So I think it's going to be an uphill climb in terms of their ability to compete for, a division title in the NFC South. But I expect Tyler to ultimately earn that job. They drafted him in the second round, and he's going to be surrounded by a lot of experienced people on that offensive staff.
My last question for you, Eric. Is there anything that you look for specifically in terms of the NFL calendar and the post-June 1st? I feel like that's always mentioned in a lot of contracts. Is there anything or any players that you have your eye on that maybe NFL fans should keep an eye that could maybe get traded or released post-June 1st?
Yeah, I think Jalen Ramsey for me is a person to keep an eye on. It sounds like, Miami is ready to move on from him. I know that Sean McVay didn't rule out the possibility of him returning back to Los Angeles where he won a Super Bowl. Certainly they understand his skill set, how he fits into their scheme. their defense coordinator, Shula, was there when Ramsey was there. He was coaching linebackers at that time. So I think that would be one move that would make a lot of sense after that June 1st deadline for him to return to the West Coast.
He's Eric Williams. He is the NFC West beat writer for @NFL on Fox. You can also tweet him at Eric_D_Williams. Eric, always appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate you.
Eric is brought today by All City Towing. And they are the largest towing company in the state and place where your career can get a serious boost. They're hiring now dispatchers, call takers, lot attendants, drivers, and customer service pros. Enjoy set schedules, top-tier towing equipment, healthy benefits, a 401k with employer match, paid life insurance, and even monthly fuel allowance. Sound good? Well, take the next step. Visit allcitytowing.com. That's allcitytowing.com. All City Towing, where your future is on the move. Well, coming up, it's On This Day in our football at 50. It's all next on Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B, right here from Wright Toyota on ESPN 620 and 98.7 FM HD2.
In sports and pop culture. Now, time for your Wright Toyota On This Day report. Wright Toyota, right on the corner, right on the price. Wright Toyota in Scottsdale.
On This Day is driven by Vans Golf Shops in Arizona, serving golfers since 1963. Expert service, custom fitting, and a 90-day satisfaction guarantee. Visit worldwidegolfshops.com. That's worldwidegolfshops.com to find a location nearest you. We're going to go back to 1953, the very first Major League Network baseball game. The Indians beat the Chicago White Sox 7-2. And back in 1992, before there were 30 teams, Jax, New York Yankees Scott Sanderson becomes the 9th pitcher to beat all 26 major league teams at that time. So you think about that. Get all teams now. If you were to do that feat now, I'm sure you'd be in the Hall of Fame. I think Randy Johnson's come close, both the 30 teams and all Major League Baseball. He took care of all of them. Scott Sanderson, phenomenal pitcher, go way back with the New York Yankees.
Do you think Paul Skeens could do it if he got traded to the Yankees?
Oh, man. You know what?
At one time, it's tough.
Yeah.
I get that. But what would be like a reasonable number, you think, with 30? Could he get half?
I would say 28. Right nowadays, it just depends. Because, I mean, in those days, you stop and think about it. And you think about, the kind of hitters and pitchers that they had. It'd be very difficult now. Because I think most managers are going to yank you in the 7th inning because of the metrics. And I think that'd be very difficult to win them all. You might win. Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. Maybe half of them. Look at the 30 teams. If you beat 15 to 18, just because it's just a whole different game. All right, we're going to get to football 50 a little bit earlier there, Connor. So give me a little football and 50 love. We love the on this. All right, Jax, what do you got over there?
Yeah, how about Jacoby Myers? Interesting story here. This is the second week of OTAs, and quarterback Geno Smith has made a strong impression. Just ask Jacoby Myers, who we just talked about off the air, but since entering the league in 2019, he has played with 9 different starting quarterbacks, including 5 in 2 seasons with the Las Vegas Raiders.
How many?
9 quarterbacks, which you can rank them accordingly.
Okay.
Tom Brady, the GOAT.
Yep.
He played him with his rookie year over there with the Patriots.
Okay.
Cam Newton, Mac Jones, Jarrett Stidham, and most recently, Derek Carr, Gardner Minshew, and Aiden O'Connell. So now he'll be with Geno Smith and potentially Cam Miller, who was the quarterback they got out of North Dakota State. So that's a whole lot of quarterbacks. And as a wide receiver, that's kind of tough, the chemistry issues there. And with Tom Brady and maybe even Cam Newton, not so bad, and Derek Carr, who've been vets in the league, but a lot of young, talented, a lot of experience, poor quarterback play he's been around.
All right, Mr. Former wide receiver at Montana. How difficult is that? You talked about that. I mean, you mentioned, well, what's the rub? How difficult is that from the receiver's perspective?
Yeah, I just think with the amount of experience a quarterback has, it's not a big issue. If you have an offseason where it's the quarterback and you can get through routes on air and you can get through 7-on-7s and team drills and stuff like that, I don't think it's a big deal to gel quickly with the quarterback. It just depends, I guess, the skill level wide receiver and the skill level of the quarterback itself. But if it's in season where the Raiders had Derek Carr, Gardner Minshew, and Aiden O'Connell in the same season, I think that can be an issue because you don't have an Aiden O'Connell who's been getting a lot of team reps. And then the next week, you got to play a Chiefs or you got to play the Broncos. So I think if it's an in-season adjustment, it can be an issue. But a guy like Jacoby Myers, who's a slot wide receiver who can create a lot of space, it shouldn't be as big of an issue. And it makes sense why he's been in the league for so long.
Yeah, I can see as a quarterback to come in there. It sounds like Geno Smith's kind of coming and taking control. I mean, you got Chip Kelly's offensive coordinator. You got your high, you're basically your runner-up in the Heisman, Genty at running back. So he's going to have an arsenal of weapons. I think what it does for the offense, for the receivers, tight ends, all the above, is it just kind of settles everybody down that here's a guy that's seen just about every defense. He knows what it takes to win. He's been to the playoffs. He's got a strong arm. He's 6'4", 6'5". He still moves very, very well. But I think it's the maturity aspect that they have not had since Derek Carr left. I talked about Brady his rookie year and Derek Carr. So I think we need from that standpoint of the offense is to have a calming influence of having so many quarterbacks, so many offensive coordinators. Now you got Chip Kelly, who understands what needs to be done to take this team to the next level. It all starts with Geno Smith.
And they're all right-handed, too. I think the biggest myth, and I don't think so as a wide
receiver.
Is that a thing
for you?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think it's just an excuse. It's a BS excuse from some of these wide receivers. When they say the ball spins differently from a right-handed quarterback versus a left-handed quarterback, the ball gets there.
I was going to say.
It's the same thing. It tails the exact same. I think that's the biggest excuse when wide receivers say it's so hard to catch from a left-handed quarterback versus a right-handed quarterback. It blows me away. Some other NFL news. How about the Vikings finalizing a deal, a multi-year extension with their general manager, I'm going to try to say his name.
All right.
I don't think I can, and I apologize if I miscorrect
Okay, so if you like Rock, if you say quick enough, we won't know.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
That's pretty good.
Not bad. So the Vikings, Manuch, kind of a mystery team in the NFC North. You know, you got the Bears with Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson. We expect a big jump from them in year 2, year 1 for Ben Johnson. The Packers will always be relevant, but the Lions are kind of that dominant team in the NFC. They'll be at the top. The Vikings are the one where everyone has circled. If J.J. McCarthy can just get it together, they've got the roster. They're really talented, and now they got their general manager for a while. Their head coach is set, and you got a rookie quarterback. So it's a Vikings team that's got a lot of mystery to them, but they could explode this year.
Well, and I think you brought it up. If J.J. McCarthy can get settled, be productive. I mean, he had a year to at least watch out there, Sam Darnold do his thing. So he knows the offense. Now it's just a matter of getting out there, getting the reps, getting comfortable. But I will say this, folks. Once live ammo, real games start, it is a whole different world. So he needs the reps. He needs to get a lot of reps in preseason, but just enough so he doesn't get hurt.
You mentioned, sorry to cut you off there, but you mentioned Jacoby Myers playing with 9 quarterbacks. This is about to be Justin Jefferson's 6th year in the NFL, and he's played with 4 quarterbacks in 3 years. Kirk Cousins, then Nick Mullins.
Oh, Nick Mullins. Okay.
Sam Darnold, and now J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, I think that J.J. McCarthy is kind of the common denominator. I think they can protect him. You talked about this offensive line with their running game. I think the way that Kevin O'Connell runs his offense, it's a quick passing game. It's get the ball out, get it to your receivers,
4 minutes.
As you talked about, to make sure that they kind of pitch and catch, kind of be that point guard initially, because J.J. McCarthy's got a big arm. I mean, he's a solid quarterback, big arm, but I think until they get – you may not be able to take the training wheels off of him until maybe 6-7 games into the season. At that point, if you start to see it, understand it, make audibles, see the adjustments on the fly with the receivers, I think that's going to be the big building block for the Vikings this year.
Yeah, I think he's more mobile than Sam Darnold. I think you look back with O'Connell, what can they prevent from that Rams game? What can they prevent from that Lions game when they got pressured off the wazoo up the middle and Darnold was flustered? You don't want to see that from a guy who's basically in his rookie year with J.J. McCarthy. I'd say the one upside and that Vikings fans can have like promise with J.J. McCarthy is I think him coming from Jim Harbaugh means something. I think him coming from Michigan means something. You've seen all the quarterbacks and all the players that Jim Harbaugh has coached and the transition they made in the NFL. And maybe it's a blessing in disguise that his first year he kind of took a step back and evaluated the game from different perspectives. I saw some quotes from defensive linemen and offensive linemen talk about how J.J. McCarthy would go in their meetings and kind of ask them what their perspective is on the opposite side of the ball. So I think the maturity is there for J.J. McCarthy, but this is a team that needs to splash early, especially in a tough division.
And let me say this real quick before we move on, because I know we got a couple tight ends that are on the move too, or maybe on the move. To have that first year to watch, practice, see how it's all done, for me, it was paramount. I mean, the speed of the game is like going from 3rd gear to 7th gear. The defenses, the offenses, the only way I can kind of explain it to you, it's like learning Chinese and having to relay it back in Greek. It's that complicated. It's going from getting your master's in college to working on your doctoral, or let me put it this way. You need to have your doctoral in place before you move on to the National Football League. That's why I admire so many of these young guys, the Jaden Daniels of the world, some of those guys that come in as rookies and have had success. Now, they've had good people around them, but I think the whole thing about reps matter. You brought it up. To have as many reps as McCarthy's had in college, and especially the success he's had at Michigan to win the national title, that means something. So these guys are way ahead of the curve than we were coming out of college, because it was very rare if any of us started that first year.
Those play calls they give them are so long.
Ours
so long.
Ours were very simple. So it'd be split right formation, 63. That'd be the pass protection and the route. Split right 63. On two. Ready? Break. The only variation we put is, all right, split right zoom, split right 63, X post corner, H scat. On two. Ready? Break. Now these guys are given paragraphs with a lot of them. So it's to be a young quarterback now, you got to let them develop, and you got to get them to be able to play with all the things that are going on. So that's our Football 50s, brought to you by Arena Sports Grill in Scottsdale. Great food, cold drinks, and off-track betting. Catch the action 62nd Street and Bell Road. That is, again, Arena Sports Grill in Scottsdale. Well, coming up in hour number 2, we catch up with sports handicapper Scott Spreitzer as he stops by to break down tonight's games and all the games that are out there going on.
30 seconds.
This all the weekend's NBA playoffs. And he'll take an early look at the Panthers-Oilers game of Stanley Cup once again. All that and much, much more. We're out here at Wright Toyota, where you won't go wrong. They've got kind of a continuation of Memorial Day sale as they've got it going on. It's all next on Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2, and always streaming on the Arizona Sports app as we are live from Wright Toyota.
It's of Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck and need a check? Make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900. And now on your ESPN station in Phoenix, ESPN 620, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B.
Welcome into hour number 2 of Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B. Dan Manuch alongside Jackson Groff. Got Connor Collins spinning the tunes back at the ESPN 620 studios. Hope you're having a great Friday afternoon as things wind down for the week. Phoenix Suns head coaching finalist looks like it's anywhere from 4, 5, 6, depending who you talk to. And, of According to the Arizona Republic, the leading sources of the Republic have said that the Cleveland Cavaliers assistants Jordan Knott and Johnny Bryant are potentials. Oklahoma City Thunder assistant Dave Bliss, who's right now coaching with the Thunder, and hopefully they can win a championship. How about Dallas Mavericks assistant Sean Sweeney? And then last but not least, Miami Heat assistant Chris Quinn are the finalists. But Jack looks like another one that's sneaking in. He's always been a consideration, I would think, is David Fizdale, who is one of those individuals that is part of the team per se, assistant coach for this Phoenix Suns team. And I think once the individual is picked, I'm just very interested to see what Matt Ishbia's thoughts were as far as what the criteria was. You watch Dave Bliss. I guess he's the defensive coordinator for the Thunder, and watching the way that they clamp down.
You're such a football guy.
I know.
Defensive coordinator.
Well,
I love it. But that's the only way you can describe somebody nowadays in sports.
Well, here's the thing. The NBA assistants have picked that terminology up, and they call their defensive guys defensive coordinators. So they bleed across each other once in a while. But I think if you're serious, and I hear this, okay, defense. But Jax, you got to have the right guys that are bought into the defense, i.e., when you look at Caruso for the Oklahoma City, guy's a pest. He's all over. About Lou Dort, what he did the other night as far as shutting down Ant-Man. You got to have the right blend. You can have the best defensive coordinator in the league, and if Dave Bliss is that guy, you got to have the right guys that are ready, willing, and able to play that defensive side. So when I hear this, wasn't Frank Vogel, who was a coach 2 coaches ago, was one of the best defensive coordinators ever, couldn't get the Suns to play defense? When Mike Budenholzer, he brought a couple of his guys on that preached defense. He couldn't get it to happen. How about Monty Williams? When he was the head coach for the Phoenix Suns, they preached defense, had defense for a while, and then things went to hell in a handbasket, and he was gone. So does the 4th head coach in the last 5 years for this Phoenix Suns, does he have a magic potion?
So wild.
Different than any of the last coaches when we talk about defense?
It's so wild to say. And you made a good point talking about Alex Caruso and Lou Dort and all those players, but I would also want to double down on that and say, why not the superstars play defense on both ends? We talked Jalen Brunson and the praise that he got last night guarding Halliburton, and Halliburton's on the other end as well, guarding the best player. And, Nesmith also, they've got a lot of guys that are determined on the defensive end as well as the offensive end. You're spot on. I think a guy to me that would be my leading candidate, we probably both agree on this, would be Chris Quinn. Spoelstra's lead assistant at Miami. He's a former NBA player from 2006 to 2013, and he's got the symbol of Heat culture, and that's what you've seen from Spoelstra to get his guys to buy in on both the offensive and defensive end, and he's got NBA playing experience. And I think that matters in nowadays from a player's perspective, getting advice from a former player who's been there and he's done that over there with the Miami Heat when they've won all those titles. So for me, Chris Quinn would be the number one guy. I think the biggest concern for Suns fans after you saw Brian Gregory get hired with no experience and having Michigan State ties would be Jordan Ott. Because Jordan Knott is not the associate head coach. He's an assistant with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he's got Michigan State ties. So is that a common theme, or is it a common theme that you joked earlier off the air talking about, well, Jax, they went out and got somebody outside of the Suns building 2 years in a row with Vogel and Budenholzer, and it hasn't worked. Maybe Fizdale is like the reverse of it and going in-house, a guy that's been a finalist, it seems like, for the last 3 years, and maybe he's the guy. And there's reports of, quote, key players vouching for David Fizdale. Well, is the key player, is it Devin Booker? Is it Grayson Allen? Because Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, it's been known, or it seems like it's been known that Matt Ishbia in this franchise is going to move on from those guys. So could Fizdale come in and be the head coach? I don't know how I feel about that.
I listened to all this. By the way, you were talking about guys that are committed, some of the stars that are committed. All that SGA, also on that Oklahoma City, committed to his defense.
Agreed.
I look at this, whoever they pick, I just hope that the philosophies are a two-way street. And then they get the right blend and they get the right players to commit to Matt Ishbia's and the new general manager's philosophy. That's all well and good. But we saw it hasn't worked. The last 3 coaches So the common denominator is kind of players that you're going to have. If you trade KD, what kind of player are you going to trade for? Or players are you going to trade for? If Bradley Beal gets traded, okay, he agrees to the trade. What kind of player or players are you going to trade for? So when I look at this Oklahoma City Thunder blend of players, they built through the draft. They had their tough times for about 2 or 3 years there before they built up. I look at the trade for Hardenstein. You got SGA who brought on Dort, Holmgren, and Jalen Williams, young man from Perry High School. I see that blend, but the key is I see the blend off the bench. And we talked about Caruso. We talked about Jalen Williams, reference to what he can do. The guys that can really step up on the depth and the defensive side. So I think the defense is a commitment, but I hear it over and over again, and I'm going, guys, you got to have the right players. You got to have the right blend. You got to have the right mix. We saw last night, Tom Thibodeau. He's known for his defense, no matter what kind of players he has, because it's demanding. You don't play unless you give me some defense. So we saw that from Catman, from Jalen Brunson, pretty much shutting down Tyrese Halliburton. Only 7 shots, but he was all over him. So defense wins championships, but you better have the right kind of guy and the right kind of players that are committed to that. And if you don't, then what do you do? Who do you go after?
The era of the big three is no longer. And both Indiana and OKC, to your point, are proving that you need depth offensively and you need guys that can bust their ass on the defensive end. You not even mentioned 2 guys that you were going to explain on the bench. Wallace and Wiggins are 2 super underrated pieces to this Thunder team because they can sub out SGA and Jalen Williams, and they know they're going to have the same production defensively with those 2 guys on the court. That's what the Suns have to establish. And a guy with Chris Quinn, I think, is the main guy that the Suns should go after, a guy that can be relatable and a guy that's like Miami Heat. I mean, whether you love them or hate them, they haven't had any dominant seasons, but it seems like they're always in the playoffs. They're always in the mix. They've got a lot of good rotational bench guys. I think that type of guy is what you need over for the Phoenix Suns. But as a whole, taking a step back, I'm not a big NBA guy. You're not a big NBA guy. We're more football guys. But when it comes to the NBA
I am
offseason,
a Suns guy, though. I am a Suns fan.
Yeah, you're a Suns fan.
Yeah, I'm a Suns fan.
But is this like the most anticipated NBA offseason that you can remember in the coming years?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because the Suns, you've got the Lakers, you got the Celtics. What's Giannis going to do? What are they going to do with KD? Like, it seems like there's so many storylines where, yes, the NBA Finals are next week, and we'll talk about, the Eastern Conference and so on. But it seems like there's a lot going on this NBA offseason. You just wonder where the Suns fit.
And from the national perspective, I do turn into NBA TV once in a while. You see on ESPN, a lot of the sports shows. And you just brought up a point that for the Phoenix Suns, it's a big offseason because the mantra out there is that the Suns are a mess. And they are a mess. Let's admit it. Got a new general manager. You're going to have a new head coach. There's a lot of indecision about Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. Devin Booker, it seems, is going absolutely nowhere. So you got a couple young guys that you're building around. I mean, this team is on the map for all the wrong reasons. And you struck a nerve when you said the Suns typically years ago when they went to the NBA Finals, all right, how do they enhance? What do they do to actually win an NBA title when you had the Milwaukee Bucks pretty much sweep you the last 4 games in a row? So how do you build on that? They went to the finals, and the chatter was, wow, is CP3 slowing down? What happened to DeAndre Ayton in the last couple of games? Where was Devin Booker when they need him? You know what I mean? Even in their success, the Suns have had some kind of mantra coming at them of what they need to do. Now, it has been nothing but, hey, now that they got Mike Budenholzer last year as the head coach, he knows how to win. He knows what it takes. Maybe he can straighten out these big 3. Because you had Frank Vogel, who also won an NBA title, that here's the guy that basically knew defense, could not get it done. And then last year, one of the worst seasons ever. Now, I've been around here forever for this Suns team. So the news you would just hope in the offseason would be positive. And I think this Suns team's got 2 more years of all this, I'll call it bad juju or news, as far as them moving on and getting competitive.
So you being the big Suns fan you are, if you were the general manager right now and you look at these candidates, and I know it's tough kind of evaluating assistants because we don't know a whole lot about them other than the resume, and they went elsewhere the last 2 years with former NBA championship winning head coaches. It did not work. Which of these 6 appeals you? Is it Chris Quinn? Is it Chris Quinn alongside some other guy that If they hired him, okay, I would be happy.
Rep.
Is there anyone on here that you have some concern?
You know, you brought it up. I think with that Chris Quinn, former player, he's been under Spoelstra for several years. They've done, I think, more with less. But you can't fault all the other guys. You know, Jordan Ott and Johnny Bryant with the Cavaliers' success there. Dave Bliss, we talked about the defensive guru having success with the kind of team he has. They're all very well qualified. Fizdale, he's qualified as well too. So it's just going to be a tough choice. I just think, in my mind, if I had to make a choice to answer your question, Jax, I would say Chris Quinn. Been there, done that as a player. Got to respect him. Got to respect his experience as a head coach, and got to respect how he can get it done with less players. That would definitely be my choice. Well, the Cardinals are done with their OTAs and getting ready for their mandatory minicamp next week. We have some of the sounds from head coach Jonathan Gannon, some of the players. That's all next on Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B right here on ESPN 620 98.7 FM HD2.
Located at 77th Street and Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard in Scottsdale. Now back to the guys on ESPN 620.
I think the offense will take another jump. I do. I mean, I think we got some guys coming off injury that are going to be back to help us out. I think Trey's still an ascending player. I think Marvin, Mike Wilson, Greg Dortch, Zay Jones, Zay Weaver. I think all those guys, can take a jump in our offense. I think our offensive line played well last year. I think it's a good group, and I think it's going to. I think that whole group's going to have a chance to ascend and build on what they did last year, and I'm excited to get going on that here as on-field activities start here over the next week.
General Manager Monty Ossenford of the Arizona Cardinals after the NFL draft in reference to the guys that he has brought in. And, that was kind of a precursor to the OTAs. OTAs wrapped up today. A mandatory minicamp next week. These OTAs were voluntary. I'm pretty sure, aside from maybe one or two guys, that everybody was pretty much there. The one lineman that wasn't there, who's never really at the OTAs for the Arizona Cardinals, it escapes my mind.
Was it Beecham?
Might have been Beecham.
Yeah. I think from what I heard, and Jonathan Gannon, and we'll get to a bunch of clips here from the Burns and Gambo interview they had yesterday. He talked about there wasn't any unexpectations of people that they were going to bring in. With a lot of these teams, a lot of guys are holding it out because of contract extension issues, or maybe surprisingly didn't show up when they thought they did, which I think is a great sign for Jonathan Gannon and this culture that they've established here, that there's not some like nuances or some surprises. Whoever's in the building they knew was going to be in the building.
Sure, and we're going to catch up with Rob Fredrickson, former Arizona Cardinal linebacker, and also part of the broadcast, the game broadcast during the season. Get his thoughts on. So a lot of you fans out there can go, okay, what do they do at OTAs, and what are they going to do at the mandatory minicamp? Number one, the minicamp is mandatory. If you don't show up, you will get fined. And then these OTAs were voluntary. It sounds like they had 99% participation as far as that's concerned. You talked about Jonathan Gannon as far as the expectations that he wants this entire team. Here's Jonathan Gannon with the expectations for one Kyler Murray in year 3 of his regime.
I think play to his level consistently.
Yep.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And because when he plays to his level, it's elite. I firmly believe that.
But it's not enough right now, right?
No, I think it is enough when he plays to his level. I think what I'm looking for him of 17 games plus however many more is, can you play at that level all the time? And it takes physical stamina, it takes mental stamina, it takes competitive stamina, I call it, which he has all that. So he has another go at it this year, and I want to see it.
Again, this is from Burns and Gambo, their interview with Jonathan Gannon and all these particular players. Let me say this. He hit the nail on the head with that. Said, look, Kyler Murray can play if he's consistent week in and week out. You can't have a Kyler Murray, helter-skelter 1 week and then calm down. You need him on a consistent basis. What I like to call it is you need your quarterback to be consistently consistent week in and week out. He doesn't have to win the game for you every week. They don't need him running around for 100 yards and for another 300 yards. That's why you got the running backs. That's why they built this receiving core. And those are some of the things that they've built per se in order to take some of that pressure off. They just need Kyler Murray to be steady as she goes, to not be so high, not be so low. Somewhere in the middle lies the truth. Also, Jonathan Gannon talked about, the situation with his cornerbacks. So they got Murphy Bunting out for a while. And I think with that season-ending injury, he had some thoughts about that here yesterday.
We'll turn over every stone, though, to help our team. I feel really good about where that room is at with the guys that are coming back and the new guys added. I've never been afraid to play young guys that are a little more inexperienced than other guys. Does experience help you? Yes, it does. You know what I mean? But the way to get experience is time on task on the job. And what you see is if guys are truly trying to maximize themselves as football players, that can happen very quickly. And just because they're only a year in or 2 years in or 3 years in doesn't mean that they can't take a huge jump because they're getting clock.
I think that does say something, that he's playing the young guys and he has trust in them. And look, we've seen some instances where Max Melton got burned a couple of times at the beginning of last season, but he finished the year well. What does Garrett Williams look like this year, who could be a star on this defense? So I think for him, he kind of likes playing those younger talent guys. And it's like with me coming into this business, right? 2.5 years ago, I came on the radio, didn't have a lot of experience. I was kind of thrown in the fire and learned on the go.
Took your floaties off.
Took my floaties off and got experience to where I am today before I was 2.5 years ago. That's where he has trust in some of these cornerbacks. Now, we'll see if it bites him in the ass when he has to play Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua and some of those great duos they have in the NFC West. But I can't fault Jonathan Gannon having confidence in what they've done, bolstering that room, as well as, the defensive line that will also kind of aid those cornerbacks as well.
We looked at James Conner, had a great season last year. Trey Benson, the young man out of Florida State, had his rookie year last year, and I believe sometimes that jump is monumental. Here's Trey Benson talking about his rookie year to now heading into year 2.
I feel way more confident than last year around this time. Last year I was
sorry, someone was telling me we have an emergency broadcast service here at 2:25.
Not so much, but year 2 coming around, like I feel like it's good things about to happen. I'm walking like I already have it. Like I'm walking like this is already gonna be a good year because I feel it in my gut. So I'm just trusting the man upstairs because he giving me a feeling, and I'm just taking it day by day.
Jack's interesting. This kid at Florida State had a home run gear. He really did. He can run. But I don't think we've seen it enough. He still has a home run gear. He run like a 4.40 for running back. Good size, good speed. But I think he'll start to see the hole quicker. He'll be more patient as far as running. And I thought he did a decent job as a rookie last year. But I think what we want to see from him is more explosiveness coming out of the backfield.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in this draft specifically wanted them to go get a Cam Scatterbo or go get another running back because of how deep it was, and the Cardinals didn't because of trust of this guy. And we've seen now in the NFL where a lot of teams are running too high, which prevents them from getting those outside shots to Marvin Harrison Jr. or Michael Wilson. Well, if you can run the football with a 1-2 punch, him alongside James Conner, I think Trey Benson could be that breakout guy. If he can and he talked about in this interview too, how he's more confident towards the back end of the season where he's breaking some of those tackles that maybe he didn't think at the beginning of the season. Because we all agree with this offense, if James Conner, who is a dominant back, a top 7 back in this league, but he is hurt, you saw the offense drop tremendously because they didn't have that guy at the running back field. And I think he's one of those guys, Manuch, that could be a breakout player if he can just have that confidence himself and see what we saw with him at Florida State replicate in this year in the NFL Cardinals.
Again, special thanks to Burns and Gamble for those sound bites. You brought this guy up a little earlier, Darius Robinson, defensive end. Rookie last year, what did he play? Maybe 3 or 4 games. Calf injury. Was it really to miss basically an entire season because of a calf injury? Now, I've had a tear in my calf. It took maybe, I think, about 4 to 5 weeks to come back fully. This kid was out, it seemed like almost the entire season. Here's Darius Robinson talking about that year last year in reference to all things going forward.
Man, I don't know. I just know it's going to be something crazy. Last year was like the hardest year of my life, but then it was the best year of my life in the same year. So I definitely felt the lowest, but I've also felt the highest, and I'm ready to get back to the highest point. And I know what it takes, a lot of hard work. So I'm just super excited for this year. Yeah, like especially seeing Trey, because Trey talked to all the rookies last year, and he just talking about how his first years he didn't really play that much, and then he just slowly became who he was. So then when he became the highest paid tight end, I'm like bro, it's crazy. Like this guy's my teammate. I talked to him, I heard his story, and I think about my story and just think about just putting one foot in front of another. And it's just awesome having good leaders like Trey. And that's a blessing for him and his family. So, at the end of the day, that's the goal. But, winning is more important too. So I'm just excited just to do my role to the best of my ability.
Well, we're hoping that he has a good season. And Trey McBride did not have he played. He was frustrated with his rookie year.
Yeah, behind Zach Ertz.
Yeah, behind Zach Ertz, and a good guy to learn from. And I think with him talking, Trey McBride talking to the rookies last year, look, be patient, work hard, work to be your best every day. So I think with Darius Robinson, that's going to be very, very key. Again, thank you for the Arizona Cardinals fan soundbite. We talked about James Conner, the captain. He's the guy that I really feel if this offensive line, this running game is on par, this is pretty much where this team needs to go. Here's James Conner talking pressure on the offense with the lack of the offseason and the urgency the Cardinals need to have this year.
I believe so, yeah. And it's up to us to own up to that responsibility and understand it, that,
All right, as soon as this done, let's get ready to toss the break. I think they're going to play a service here over us.
Right now is what it's our job to get the ball in the end zone with the group that we got right now. So we feel that responsibility, and the pressure is good for us. So we're enjoying it. Why not be right now? The time is now. We got talented roster right now. We added talented players to it, so I'm ready. We ain't doing this forever. I sure enough ain't, doing it forever. So
sooner the better. We'll put it like that.
That's Arizona Cardinals captain. That's James Conner. Again, special thanks to the Arizona Cardinals. Well, coming up, we'll catch up with sports handicapper Scott Spreitzer of DocSports.com and handicap Game 6 of the Knicks-Pacers series and an early look at the first game of the Stanley Cup, which will be on Wednesday. But first, Connor has your right to Toyota ESPN 620 update as you're listening to Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B right here on ESPN 620. That's right. He is the handicapping guru, Scott Spreitzer, at DocSports.com. You can also tweet him or X him at Scott Spreitzer. Scott, it's Manuch alongside Jax. Has it been hard as far as handicapping these basketball games? OKC has moved on. And then you got the Knicks game 6 tomorrow. We'll get into that. And then hopefully a game 7. But as far as the blowouts are concerned, it seems like the last couple of years, either you win by 30 or you lose by 30. Is that a trend, or is that something we're starting to see? And how hard is that to handicap the over-unders?
Yeah, there's been a lot of wide margin wins, and I've had a really nice postseason, guys. So it's been one of those things where I've been able to be on the right side. Last night was a small play on the Knicks because they did look just out of sorts in the previous game against Indiana. And then the Knicks made adjustments, and they were able to get the victory to send it to Saturday's game. So it's actually I've been really happy with the NBA, especially it started around March 27th. And that's when we were having a good season. And then March 27th kicked it into gear. And then once the playoffs start, we've been able to be on the right side more often than not. So it's just picking those situations on when you think the team is going to make the adjustment. But like you said, I mean, I grew up with the NBA. I don't remember seeing 30-point blowouts in every game. One team wins by 30 one night, and they go up against the team the next time, and they lose by 30, like you said. So been unusual, but we've been able to be on the right side.
And I know you've been handicapping for many, many years, Scott. I was watching. They're replaying The Dance on ESPN, the Michael Jordan story, if you will. And looking at those games in the mid-'90s and mid-2000s, to your point, closer games, last 2 minutes were always fun because somebody was going to win. It was rare you saw somebody win by 10, let alone 30 points. In your many, many years of handicapping, has this been harder or easier knowing that the three-point shot has pretty much been predominant?
Yeah, I'm not a fan just a fan of the league of all the three-pointers that are taken, but you adjust as a handicapper. And, when Golden State started, becoming that blueprint for 3 beats 2, and started shooting threes like crazy, it took a little time to adjust to it. But now that we've had a few years of it, about a decade, it's one of those situations where you just adjust to it and you adjust your handicapping. There was a time about 15 years ago or 20 years ago when 2 teams in a playoff game would combine for about 20 to 25 three-point attempts combined. And now you got teams shooting, the Celtics shot 60 three-pointers in one of their games of the playoffs. So it took time to adjust, kind of like anything else, but once you do it, it just becomes the norm.
All right, Scott, let's get it going with tomorrow night's game. Game 6, Knicks at the Pacers. Last time I looked, Indiana was favored by 3.5. Over-under to 19.5.
Yeah, without taking too much credit away from the Knicks, it did take abnormalities by both teams for New York to win the 2 games they did. Game 3, you've got Indiana up by 20. Indiana falls apart in the 4th. Karl Anthony Towns went nuts. He had 20 points in that game in the 4th quarter, and he grabbed 8 rebounds in the 4th quarter. And Indiana slipped into a half-court game on offense late in the 3rd, throughout the 4th. And that's not their game. They're not a good, half-court offense. And they played it for almost the entire 4th quarter of that game. And then last night, we had the Knicks. Again, it was a small play, but we had the Knicks, so I was pleased. But after dominating on offense and nailing shot after shot by picking on Jalen Brunson as the primary defender, the Pacers went ice cold against him last night. And then the Knicks adjustment, they picked up Halliburton full court when he brought the ball up court last night. And he ends up going off of his game. He took 7 shots the entire game. That's another thing we didn't see back in the day. You didn't see the stars of the NBA teams who are averaging 28 points a game all of a sudden take 7 shots in an entire playoff game. And that's what happened with Halliburton last night. So I think Indiana will in turn now make adjustments. They'll be back at home, and I think they'll force New York into an up-tempo game, which New York doesn't like. And that's what Indiana did in their 3 wins. And I think they'll get the win and the cover and move on to take on OKC.
Okay, Scott, I like that answer there. Let's go to the NHL Stanley Cup, a rematch from a year ago. Panthers-Oilers. I think it's even money right now in terms of the series as a whole. But what I'm looking at, the Oilers are favored in Game 1. How do you see Game 1? And then also just your overall thoughts about this matchup between the two. Me and Manuch were joking earlier about the over-under. I'm surprised it's only at 6.5. That seems a little low there.
It's got first 1 to 7 wins these games. I mean, my goodness,
yeah,
you guys
basically.
Score.
I mean, that total is up to, it's 6 with juice on the over in some spots. There's some 6.5s out there, as you mentioned. And I got to tell you guys, the dominance by Edmonton against Vegas and Dallas has been absolutely amazing. I mean, they didn't allow any major chances or expected goals. They didn't allow many around the net. And Stuart Skinner, who was a disaster, 2 weeks ago, first two games against the Kings, got replaced by Calvin Pickard, and then he was forced back in against Vegas due to injury, and he caught fire. If you look at Skinner's first three playoff starts this year, they had the two against LA, then he got replaced. Then again, he had to come in and start against Vegas. So his first three NHL playoff starts this season, he allowed 15 goals with 82 saves, which is a horrible .817 save percentage. And when he had to start against Vegas after the Pickard injury, I thought Vegas had a chance because of who was between the pipes. So then he plays well against Vegas. He's been playing extremely well against Dallas. And as far as the Panthers, they come into this third in the NHL in shots on goal per game during the regular season, sixth in shots on goal allowed. Bobrovsky has a .935 save percentage over his last 10 games. Nothing unusual or fluky when Bobrovsky's between the pipes. I thought Skinner obviously made a huge leap after those first three games. Guys, I think the Panthers are going to steal the win on Saturday night and steal the series. However, if I'm wrong on this one, I'm not going to be shocked, because if Edmonton gets that power play going against Florida, I mean, there's just no stopping that team when they get more power plays than the opposition. So, but I'm going to back Florida here. I'm going to stick to my guns. A couple of months ago, I was asked about the series on a hockey show, not this series, but the Stanley Cup, and I said I think Florida's going to win it for the second time, and I think that's the case. I think they're going to win their second straight Stanley Cup.
But when you watch Florida, Scott, I looked at the last 4 or 5 games. They've outscored their opponents 99-2. I mean, it just seems like it was just. I think it was actually 16-3 or something along those lines. To see that kind of offense with that kind of defense, and to your point, to see Florida, to see such prowess on both sides of the ice is pretty amazing.
It is, and I don't see there's no props yet for this, but I'm going to be looking to play Bobrovsky his over when it comes to saves. Like we saw him against Carolina a couple of times, that number was around 26.5 saves. I'll be looking for things like that because Edmonton is likely to get their shots with that offensive attack, but I think Bobrovsky's up to the challenge. So, yeah, I mean, I've been kind of touting Florida now for about 2 months, so I'm going to stick with them to win their second straight cup and send Canada back home for about the 400th year in a row without a Stanley Cup.
You don't have to say it with such satisfaction. We love our Canadian brothers. They love Las Vegas, Scott. Easy on those guys.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to a fellow better friend of mine who lives in the Phoenix area yesterday, and I said, I've got 2 close friends who are from Canada, and I got to tell you guys real quickly what I do. Every time the Stanley Cup is wrapped up by an American-based team over the last 30-plus years, or over the last few years, when I call them, I leave a message on their voicemail. I make sure to call them when I know they're working. They're not in my business of handicapping. And I always say, knock, knock, who's there? Owen. Owen who? Owen 25. And I just do that each and every stand. So I'm hoping to be able to do that again, guys.
Oh, that's great. Scott Spreitzer at Scott Wins. You can tweet him at DocSports.com. All right, let's go to the National League, especially we got the Diamondbacks taking on the Nationals. So that the Nationals coming in have won 2 in a row. They've won 7 out of the last 10. When you look at this Nationals team, and then you look at the Diamondbacks, they're just a mess right now. Scott, They've lost 7 out of the last 8 and 8 out of the last 11. But on the bump tonight, you got Merrill Kelly, who's pitching fairly well. When I look at his record, he's 5-2 with a 3.52 ERA, taking on Jake Irvin. Who? Yeah, Jake Irvin, who's 4-1 with a 3.42 ERA. And management has given Torey Lovullo the vote of confidence, the old proverbial wink, wink vote of confidence. How do you see this game playing out tonight? How do you see this series maybe playing out this weekend?
Yeah, that's a huge price for this game with the way these two teams are playing. The D-backs, you got to lay, $220 to win 100. And then if you take the Nationals and put 100 on them, you can win 220 tonight plus your money back. So you just mentioned the pitchers, pair of right-handers. The last 10 games against righties, Washington has averaged almost 7 runs per game and a batting average of almost 290, 1.2 home runs per game. And then there's Arizona, their last 10 against righties. How about 3.3 runs per game, a 218 batting average, less than 1 home run per game. So the way these teams have been playing over the last 2 weeks, against right-handers especially, Washington has been dominant. They scored 9 runs in each of the last 2 games and wins at Seattle. And then you had Arizona, who crashed and burned against the Bucks. Guys, I had Zona the other night when they're up 6-0, and lost to Pittsburgh. That was not fun. They lose 9-6, and then they hit bottom the next day and lose 10-1. It's that pin that's just not trustworthy enough for me to lay $2. You mentioned Kelly having a solid season, but the team's lost 4 of his last 6 starts because of the pin for the most part. And Jake Urban has 7 strong starts in his last 8 outings, and his team is 6-2 in those starts. So I'm going to call for a big underdog to cash the ticket tonight in Arizona. I think the Nats get him in game 1.
It's not a bad pick there, Scott, with how the D-backs have been playing of recent. Let's go to one more game, a World Series rematch from last year. Yankees-Dodgers. Yankees at Dodgers being. Yankees are favored on the road. Is this one, Scott, just depends on who's pitching, or do you think the Yankees have a good opportunity to win the series?
Yeah, I think they do, but I also think like this game tonight, that number obviously based on the pitching matchup with, you got Fried over Gonsolin and big pitching advantage, at least on paper, that I think will probably translate onto the diamond is, that Fried over Gonsolin matchup. And the Dodger righty, he's been struggling. He's allowed 8 earned runs, 19 base runners in his last 2 starts, spanning just 9 innings of work. That's not good, obviously. And then Fried is putting up ridiculous numbers. I mean, he's held current. This is the thing that put it over the top for me to talk about this game and say, you know what? I like the Yankees here minus $120. If you look at Max Fried against current Dodger players, he's held those current Dodger players to a 203 batting average. And remember, he used to pitch in the NL, and of course, now with the Yankees, the Dodgers are 20th in the league in a metric called weighted runs created plus against lefties, and they're 23rd in on-base plus slugging percentage. That's not Dodger baseball that we thought we would see before the season. They're just riddled with injuries on the mound. I think the Dodgers, a month from now, maybe 6 weeks from now, will be the highest-rated power-ranked team in baseball. But right now, I have the Yankees as the number 1 team in baseball, and I think they'll get the job done tonight with Fried on the mound.
Hey, real quick, Scott, what's the over-under going to be as far as home runs hit by Ohtani and Judge? 5, 4, 10?
You got to be a bookmaker because I don't see that right now anywhere at the books, but I like that. How many combined home runs by Judge and Ohtani? That ought to be hanging in every Nevada sports book right now. And like you said, I mean, if you want to put it on the series, you're going to add up with the calculator how many they're going to get. And in each game, although you've got Fried going tonight, that ought to be at least 2.5. I mean, you might want to bet the under there, but I mean, my gosh, you don't want to lay a line for it and get beat up with one-sided money.
Scott, take it and run. Just send me a commission check. I'll be happy.
There you go.
All right, Scott. Hey, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. We'll be talking to you next Friday. There'll be a lot going on. We'll have the NBA Finals. The Stanley Cup will be going into game 2. But have a great weekend. We always appreciate it.
You too, guys. Thanks for having me.
Scott Spreitzer, a sports handicapper. You can go to just go to docsports.com or at Scott Spreitzer. He's doing pretty well, as he mentioned. All things are going very, very well for him. Well, coming up, it's our random fact of the day and Football 50. That's all next on Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B right here on ESPN 620 and 98.7 FM HD2 as we are live from Wright Toyota.
choice. Wright Toyota, located at 77th Street and Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard in Scottsdale. Now back to the guys on ESPN 620.
That's right. This is our random fact of the day, brought to you by Wright Toyota. Jax, did you know there are over 8,000 plus sports played around the world? And there are only, as of 2021, this is starting to be added, there were only 33 sports played at the Olympics as of 2021. 8,000 sports. Now, I know pickleball has been added. I'll be curious to see if they add that to the Olympics eventually.
I feel like they would. I feel like pickleball is starting to trend more, and as more people get into the players and want it to be a broadcast sport, I could see pickleball being in there.
You know, I think of the racket sports. First of all, it started with tennis, and wasn't a big tennis fan. And then racquetball came on the scene. I was playing racquetball all the time as an in-season, off-season sport as far as cardio is concerned. And now pickleball. Now pickleball seems to be less stressful, just as competitive. So it's like, what would you call it? Ping pong on a tennis court.
Yeah.
On a reduced
100%. And it's a lot cheaper too. I mean, a lot of people are converting from golf to pickleball because instead of spending $1,000, $2,000 for clubs, and then spending $50 for a fee to play 18 holes. And whether it's a good fee or a bad fee, depending on how good or bad you play, pickleball, you just need the racket, and there's so many public courses around.
Yeah, there
especially
are.
in Arizona.
And you're seeing more and more added around the valley. Boxing was actually illegal in the USA before it was up and coming. It was not until the state of New York legalized it going way back to 1896, with other states soon following. Alcohol, believe it or not, is considered a performance-enhancing drug in most shooting sports, as it calms your body down and allows you to shoot straighter. I don't want to be around anybody that's been drinking and has a gun in their hand. Nobody whatsoever. Again, let me read that. It's considered, that being alcohol, a performance-enhancing drug in most shooting sports, as it calms your body down and allows you to shoot straighter.
Do you remember that show on ESPN Sports Science where they had a bunch of myths and stuff? And one of the things I wonder if they would ever do that. You talk about Olympic sports. I always love watching the skeet shooting or the archery or the straight shooting with the targets. I want to see one of those Olympic people get drunk and see if they could be the same amount. Like, how much alcohol do you have to consume? Is there too much alcohol where it kind of goes over the edge and you're not as calm? Because I know when I'm consumed alcohol, I don't think, like you mentioned, I don't think I want to be close to a weapon.
And last but not least, the Stanley Cup's real name isn't actually the Stanley Cup. Its real name is the Dominion Hockey Challenge Cup, which we learned also, by the way, in a random fact of the day, that it has its own security guard. So there you go. Those are our random facts of the day, brought to you by Wright Toyota. All right, Connor, give us a little football at 50 love. Looks like Jackson's got a few things going on in the National Football League.
Yeah, we talked with Eric Williams in the first hour about the post-June 1st roster watch, and this is meaningful because major contract flexibility, teams like to cut or trade veterans and save millions in cap space. So some notable names post-June 1st that could either get traded or cut. Let's start with Kirk Cousins, the obvious one, the Atlanta quarterback who signed a mega contract last year. He skipped OTAs. $27.5 million will be saved by the Falcons post-June 1st if they can trade him. But if they release him, they'll have to get some of that buyout money. And the prediction that CBS came out with this article is that he'll land with the Saints. Your thoughts about that with your boy Tyler Shuck?
Well,
your thoughts in general with just Kirk Cousins?
I think that he'd be a great insurance policy. If they cut him and then he clears waivers, which I think he would, you could sign him for the league minimum. So what's he play? 12, 13, 14 years, something like that. They might bring him in at, 6-7 million with his incentives, get him up to $18 to $20 million.
The team that would also be with would be the Steelers. They've been the hot name alongside Kirk Cousins. If they aren't able to trade him, though, they would eat up $35 million straight to Kirk Cousins. Not a bad job for him or bad circumstance.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Penix, he'll be his first full year starting. He's the guy. It just depends on if Mr. Blank wants to pay a backup quarterback $27.5 million to be the backup quarterback. Is that insurance policy that big of an insurance policy? Do you feel like this is an Atlanta Falcons team that has a chance to go to the playoffs? I don't. I think they need another year or two. So if he feels that they can put another quarterback in there at a cheaper price and be an insurance policy for Michael Penix, they might go ahead and cut Kirk Cousins. And at that point, a lot of teams out there in need of a backup quarterback like Joe Flacco was out there in the market. You talk about Pittsburgh, New Orleans. I think New Orleans is set on pretty much going with the Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler. The only way New Orleans would bring him in would be as an insurance policy, or if those two individuals just can't get off the schneid, they need to have that experience.
I feel like they would have already done that, and I also feel like Kirk Cousins, he was not gonna, the Saints aren't going to trade for him.
Well,
they're gonna if anything they would pick him up, but they're not going to aid Atlanta to, hey, we're gonna trade him with you guys so you guys can save $27.5 million.
What I'm saying is if he gets waived.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I'm saying, like, with the article about the Saints thing, that doesn't make sense that he's going to get traded to the Saints.
No.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. And my whole mindset is if he's waived, that would make sense because you could pick him up cheap, cheap insurance policy, cheaper at $27 million. I mean, if he gets waived, his potential salary with incentives, if he gets signed not off the waiver wire, but signed to the team, they give him a cool $10 million if they sign him with incentives up to $20. That'd be his best bet. But I gotta believe that the Atlanta Falcons are probably going to be in the mode of letting him go. That being Kirk Cousins.
3 minutes.
And then he's going to sign with somebody else.
Some other names I want to mention: Miami, two 30-year-old. Well, Tyreek's 31 and Jalen Ramsey's 30. Both aging, both be expensive. Tyreek Hill to have a $27.7 million cap hit this season with the potential of malcontent. $15 million would be saved if they could trade him. The prediction that CBS says is that he will stay. But Jalen Ramsey's interesting because they would save $10 million post June 1st, and people think that he's going to get traded. This article predicts the Raiders. I think Ramsey's interesting because you see in the NFL a lot. Cornerback's a tough position to play. And when you get older, it's even harder to play cornerback, especially at that level that he was. He was the best cornerback in the league. Do you think Jalen Ramsey has the potential to maybe, if he does get traded, to move as like a nickel or a safety, or you think he's purely corner?
I think he'd be that nickel or safety. I agree with you. You lose your step. Now, the other thing, too,
2 minutes.
that when you dive into this article, you have to be aware of is that these guys could get cut. They could get re-signed, come back and re-sign. If they won't renegotiate their contract, if they feel that he's still got some gas in the tank, that being Jalen Ramsey, he doesn't want to renegotiate. He says, look, I'd rather be traded or cut me, and I'll do better on my own. Or they could cut him and bring him back. Now, there's that possibility with some of these individuals that they're talking about as well, too.
Some other teams that are notable for Jalen Ramsey: Falcons, Raiders, Rams. Tyreek Hill, if he were to get traded, Broncos, Chargers, Raiders. So staying in the AFC there. And then lastly, one more player to mention, Jair Alexander. The thing with the Packers, they still are trying to figure out. They could save $17 million post June 1st if they can get and trade him. The prediction here is that they restructure and that he stays. But some landing spots for Jair Alexander include the Commanders, Falcons, Raiders, and Vikings. 28-year-old, another guy who, when he's healthy, he's one of the best corners, but he just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, he can't stay healthy. And then again, that's part of that rub. The whole Tyreek Hill thing is very interesting. He still runs like a 4.3, 4.40.
He's still so good.
He's still so good. Hey, real quick.
50 seconds.
We just saw real quick, just the Kyle Pitts, the tight end for the Falcons, is now on the market.
Yeah, he's 24 years old. Some trade teams include the Patriots, the Commanders, the Steelers, Rams, Titans, Browns, and even the Dallas Cowboys potentially intrigued with tight end Kyle Pitts. How do you feel about that one, Connor?
It's all just bait, baby. We are not interested.
There you go. That is our football at 50, breaking it all down, looking at all the things that are going on. Well, coming up in hour number 3, we take a look at all the top stories. And former Cardinal linebacker Rob Fredrickson will stop by at 3:30 and talk to you about OTAs versus mandatory minicamp. Hour 3 of Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B live from Wright Toyota on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2, as we are always streaming on Arizona Sports app.
Now, an on-air sports marketing presentation. It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B, now on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2, and streaming live at arizonasports.com. The guys are powered by the law offices of Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck and need a check? Make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900. And now on your ESPN station in Phoenix, ESPN 620, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B.
Hour number 3 of Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B. Dan Manuch alongside Jackson Groff. We got Connor Collins back there at the ESPN studios, ESPN 620 studios. We are out here, Wright Toyota, where you won't go wrong, right here at Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard and 78th Street. Got a plethora of outstanding certified pre-owned vehicles, and also their great new cars that are out there on the lot. Hope you're having a great afternoon so far. We'll be on till 4 o'clock. Before we hand it back over to the national boys, if you will. Well, looking last night in the NBA, the New York Knicks are forcing a Game 6 with a 111-94 win in the Garden last night. Nice to see that. Jax, maybe, just maybe, we might go to a Game 7. So hopefully tomorrow night the Knicks can go into Indianapolis and go ahead and force a Game 7. Get back to the Garden and go ahead and see if they can get the situation set to take on OKC.
See, I'm on the other side where I want the Pacers to win and kind of close the series out and see two small market teams. Like you watch OKC, we always play the highlights on the show of a big time shot, how loud it is there and how bought in they are with everyone wearing the same colored shirt. It's like the same thing with Indiana. From my perspective, I'd love to see two teams play for a first title at the same time. But I get it. The New York market in Game 7 being the best two words in sports. I think it would be fun to see that series go back in New York and see with Indiana the pressure of the world on them. Can they go and win that series? But with Scott Spreitzer, we had him on about 30 minutes ago. He likes the Pacers to win and cover in Game 6. So you wonder if Pacers and specifically Halliburton, who said that he's got to have a better Game 6. He's got to be the guy. He's got to be the focal point of that offense. And, he's good with his assists. He had 6 assists yesterday. But he's got to score at least 15 to 20 points, specifically when that Pacers offense is slacking.
Well, tomorrow night's game is going to be at 5 o'clock. That'll be on TNT. Love the coverage. Love the Barkley and the gang, if you will, calling out whomever, wherever. I think the one thing that he was funny was as far as Catman and some of the dumb fouls that he had. And as you watch that game, I call them unnecessary fouls. And I'm glad that at halftime, and I'm also glad that Barkley, they called him out with that. I mean, even when he had 13 rebounds, 24 points, he really came alive. But there was a couple times you're like, there's no need for that. And that gets a team like Indianapolis or the Pacers back in a game. So again, that game tomorrow night, Game 6, tomorrow night at 5 o'clock on TNT. If the Knicks win that game, they play again on Monday. That game will be back in New York, as that game will be at 5 o'clock also on TNT.
Either way, though, this is the fight for second place in the NBA because the Thunder are going to win it all. I mean, they're playing on a completely different level. It would seem that the Thunder are going to win it all. They're like heavy favorite right now, and they're kind of sitting back and watching this series, scouting both teams. But I think it's been a fun playoffs overall. I think it's cool to see, the young faces in the NBA, kind of that next generation where, I know the old heads and maybe us being fans of the sport, you don't see LeBron, you don't see Steph in the late postseason, but I think it's cool to kind of see what the NBA has for the future and seeing Ant-Man. And even though he didn't play his best against the Timberwolves, how do they bounce back and try to make another run at a potential NBA final title? But I think it's cool this year, a kind of outlier where a lot of fans expected the Celtics to be here. Well, it's not with the Knicks and the Pacers. So I think it's going to be fun, watching these two young stars collide and see who can take this and go face OKC.
Well, the Diamondbacks will be back on the in action tonight. Pre-game all starts at 98.7, our sister station tonight on 98.7, as the Diamondbacks will be hosting the Nationals tonight. So the Nationals have not had that great of a year, but they've won 7 Jacks out of the last 10. The Diamondbacks have lost 7 out of the last 8 out of the last 11. Merrill Kelly takes the bump tonight. He's 5-2 with a 3.52 ERA. And he'll take on Jake Irvin. That's right, Jake Irvin, who's 4-1 with a 3.42 ERA. And this team has struggled. Management's given Torey Lovullo the vote of confidence, if you will, that he's our guy. But I got to believe starting tonight and for the entire month of June, it is going to be a big month for the Diamondbacks, for Torey Lovullo, and for this team to get back on track, because you look at Merrill Kelly's last 4 starts, even though he's pitched very well, has not gotten a lot of help with the bats. And Jake Irvin and this Nationals team is on a roll, winning 2 in a row and coming into Chase Ballpark.
Yeah, I'm looking at last year, this time when they were in June, and they were 16-11 being the Diamondbacks. In July, they took off and be 17-8. So you wonder with the Diamondbacks team, a big month, like you mentioned, propelling for the deadline, what kind of aspect or what kind of production you're going to see from this bullpen. I can't even believe I'm looking that their D-backs are 14-15 at home.
Yes.
Like that's unexcusable for a team that you play the Pirates. You're supposed to win that series. You lose the last 2 in convincing fashion. And you mentioned the Washington Nationals, their ability to score runs these last 2 games, 9-0 and 9-3 against the Mariners. So it's a big night for Merrill Kelly because things aren't going the right direction and they need some kind of momentum hanging into the weekend.
They really do. And you got to hope that they can, garner that, because these losing snaps, I believe, and I looked at their schedule, there was another losing snap. They'd lost like 7 of 10. You can't have those. I mean, we saw the Padres where they lose 6 in a row, then they got back on track. So it's going to be a matter of keeping the lows not quite so low and the highs maybe not quite so high, but they've got to start winning a series, because when you look at you leave after this series, you take on the Braves. And then after that, you're pretty much looking at your standings and trying to stay within, I would probably say, earshot of things, because you're currently 7 games back of the Dodgers. And if I look at the schedule, and I know I bemoan the fact that I'll take a look at this, but I know it's 1 game at a time. But you get on the road and you take a Braves team that's somewhat scuffling a little bit, and then Cincinnati and Seattle. So this is the time for this Diamondbacks team to, I would think, play aggressive, be aggressive, and no holes barred, which leads me to our State 48 Roofing It's Your Call question of the day, which when we talk about a lot of things that are going on with this team, this is apropos. Our State 48 Roofing It's Your Call question of the day. For a free quote, repair, or installation, head to state48roofing.com. Follow them on social media by searching #SexyRoofStatus. With Zach Gallen's pitching woes of late and up for an extension after this year, what should the D-backs do? Number 1, and just go to @Roc and Manuch on Twitter. Number 1, trade him, or number 2, keep/pay the extension next year. Jax, which way are they leaning in reference to all things that are going on?
Yeah, right now 66.7% chance is trade him.
So they're looking to trade him.
33.3% keep or pay the extension, which leads me, because I want to ask you this, because before the season, Zach Gallen's, let's face it, he was the face of the bullpen, face of pitching. It seemed like every ad that the Diamondbacks had, whether it was uniforms or ticket sales, Gallen's face is the first one. Now with Burns coming in,
he was also the ace.
Yeah, he's also the ace heading in. With Burns coming in, being the sexy new Cy Young Award winner, hire, whatever you want to call it, signing, he was kind of becoming the face and emerging as well. If you had to rank right now that you've seen for the bullpen, I'm going to list the starting pitchers. Where would you put Gallen? So we got Merrill Kelly,
2 minutes.
Brandon Font, Corbin Burns, Ryan Nelson, and Zach Gallen. Where would you rank Zach Gallen?
You mean for the starting rotation?
For the starting rotation, sorry. Where would you rank him in terms of the starting pitchers?
Man, so like say I've got I got
Merrill Kelly.
Okay, I got Kelly.
This is actually in order of when they're going to pitch. So if Diamond fans want to know.
Okay.
Brandon Font, Corbin Burns, Ryan Nelson, and Zach Gallen. Out of those 5 starting pitchers, where would you rank Gallen?
Well, Nelson, I'm going to probably give him incomplete, even though he's pitched well. He hasn't really had enough. I look at Font and Kelly. I would probably put them ahead of Zach Gallen. I would put the best right now. I'd probably go Kelly number 1, Burns number 2.
Okay.
And this is the way that he's pitching. The way that he's pitching right now, I'd go Nelson 3, 4 Font, and then 5 I would put Zach Gallen.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
what would you would have had it before the season? Would you have Gallon at 1 or 2?
I would have had Burns, Gallon, Kelly, Fott, and then Nelson wasn't there. It was Erod. So Eduardo Rodriguez was the fourth starter or the next guy because Erod been inconsistent. But right now, as far as pitching progress on the bump, I take a good look at that and I see Merrill, Kelly, and Burns are consistent. They just can't get any run support. Or let me back up. They can't get any bullpen support. So both of them have come in with leads or standing pat with the way they've pitched, and they pretty much have had the bullpen come in and implode behind him. Ryan Nelson, right now, folks, has had the cleanest last 2 starts.
Clear to break when you're ready. Clear to break.
And I really believe that Ryan Nelson, when Erod is healthy, they're going to have a tough decision with him. I think with Erod, not so much Ryan Nelson. So if Ryan Nelson is pretty much the guy that wants to make all things happen in his mind, I got to believe they got a tough decision what to do with Erod because Nelson's been more consistent.
So how many starts until Gallon can kind of make his way up that list? Is it like his next 2 or 3, or do you need to see it over a month, over 2 months? What kind of, I guess, I mean, for him to jump down, I should say, from your rankings before the season at 2 to 5 is pretty significant.
I think I need the next 3 starts. I need to see Zach Gallon get right. I need to see more consistent, not throw as many pitches, and get himself back on track. That's what I see in reference to one Zach Gallon. Well, time to hit the rewind. It's your replay rewind as the Knicks force a Game 6. The Stanley Cup is set, and Pat Mahomes says he's not interested in the Olympic flag football team. That's all right here on Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B as we are live at Wright Toyota.
Manuch with Jimmy B on ESPN 620 and on FM at 98.7 HD2.
That is a replay rewind brought to you by Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck, need a check, make one call. That's all. 602-977-1900 and always online at lernerandrowe.com. Get your free consultation today. Again, that's 602-977-1900. Lerner and Rowe, they can help. Well, big game last night, as we talked about, as the Knicks force a Game 6 in 111-94 victory over the Pacers. And, Jax, we talked about this a little earlier. The guys they traded for, the guys that they hoped could turn this team, get them to a NBA title, get back to an Eastern Conference final. One of those guys is one of our former Phoenix Suns, that being Mikal Bridges, and here's his jumper in the third quarter.
We've got 11 in the quarter. Right here for New York. Yes, I'm up 15, but you need a little momentum with your big guns coming back in the fourth. Bridges into Shepherd for two.
Now, special thanks to the team who really struggled shooting. But I think more than anything, those kind of buckets toward the end of the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, really helped propel this Knicks team for that must-win game.
Yeah, and he hasn't been as consistent as we expected when he went from the Suns to the Brooklyn Nets. He kind of took a launch of a huge jump offensively. I think he was averaging like 20, 25 points over there. Then he comes to the Knicks where you got Brunson, you got Cat. He kind of takes a step back as that third or fourth option offensively. And it seemed like in this game, only 12 points, but it felt like anytime the Pacers had some type of momentum to get it between 12 and 15, like Reggie Miller mentioned, Bridges was there to step up and make a big shot in that one. It just felt like the Knicks had the lead from the jump, and they didn't let off the gas for sure.
Well, as anytime you're in the Garden, it is very loud and very proud. And their chance at the end of the game, Knicks in 7 and 4th, hopefully comes to fruition in a couple short days.
Only looking to pass. Great job. Great attention to detail by the Knicks defense. It's Hart. Anunoby. Shot clock at 7. Setting up for 3. Rebound McConnell.
Yeah, you can hear him in the background. Knicks in 7. At that point, is 96-79. Pretty much had control of that game. I didn't see Indiana making any kind of a strong comeback at that point.
What a year for Madison Square Garden. I mean, you had the St. John's run they had. You had the Big East tournament, and then you've got the Knicks in 7. So they're hopeful they could come back, but they definitely got to win a big one. 4.5-point underdog, which Scott Spreitzer in the second hour for all you degenerates out there like myself. I'm looking forward to see what side he's going to go on there.
Well, the Cat Man, we talked about him coming up big these last couple of games, and here he is, as we mentioned, the defense, that being Jalen Brunson's defense versus Tyrese Halliburton.
I mean, obviously, he did an amazing job, and that's something that Cap always does. He always answers to the call. He answers the call every time. So, like I said, it's not just a him thing; it's all of us as a team. We win as a team, we lose as a team. I'm never going to allow Cap. He does so much for us, and we ask so much out of him every game. That he's never going to go out there and take all the blame. We all do. We're brothers. We're family. I mean, family and brothers never let someone go out there and take all the blame. We all got to be willing to lose together and win together.
Yeah, I think an NBA TV, the Cat Man talking about the defense, really the shutdown defense of Tyrese Halliburton over Halliburton. Only 7 shots by Tyrese Halliburton. Well, we move on to the Stanley Cup. It's set. As it'll get set, get going on Wednesday. And once again, it'll be Edmonton taking on the Florida Panthers. Last night, the Oilers beat the Dallas Stars 6-3. Here's how it pretty much got the 2-goal lead for this Edmonton Oilers team.
Collective breath. Draisaitl played it off. Kane centers and bounces in. Looks like it hit Lindell out in front and wound up past to Smith.
Yeah, that's right. Lindell with the deflection there with that 5-3 lead, thanks to ESPN. And last but not least, nothing more, I should say, gratifying than to have the empty netter at the end of a game to win a conference title.
We have a rematch of last year's Stanley Cup final. And here it goes toward the empty net in with 10.8 to go.
Now, a little cherry on top of that Sunday as a final score, Edmonton winning that game 6-3. Connor McDavid talking about all things that are good about going back to the Stanley Cup.
It's been fun. Just did another interview. I said, how this year feels a little bit more normal. Just been kind of status quo. It's been fun to be a part of. Hasn't been as emotional. Been very just kind of direct and smooth and steady. It's been fun.
I wonder what the next little while will be like for you. How long you will enjoy this before you look forward to the Stanley Cup Finals?
I don't know. I mean, maybe you could tell me when the game is. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a long ways away. So obviously a lot of preparing to do. Going up against a great team. Stanley Cup champs from last year, third finals in a row. Not much you could say about them. They're great. We'll have our hands full, but we're a good team. We're a special team. And we feel good about our game.
You look at this two high-scoring teams, and again, thanks to Sports in on that, as Connor McDavid kind of puts a bow on it. By the way, Connor, you play Wednesday. You got 5 days off. You can heal up, get a few skates in, and get yourself ready to go back and do it once again. Matter of fact, Jackson and I were talking about this a little earlier about teams playing back-to-back titles.
I got the list for you, too.
Okay, the first thing that stands out in my mind, unfortunately, is the Bills playing the Dallas Cowboys back-to-back years, and the Cowboys winning both those games. I got to imagine there's been Lakers-Celtics several times.
Yep, 1984 and 1985 was back-to-back. And then your point about the Cowboys-Bills, that's the only time in the NFL that a true consecutive year Super Bowl rematch has happened. For baseball, you go back to the Cardinals-Yankees 1926 and 1928, or even the Yankees-Dodgers 1977, 1978, okay. And then NHL. Last time this happened was 2008-2009 when the Penguins and Red Wings played. Red Wings got the first one. Penguins got the second one.
I will see where you mentioned Scott Spreitzer is going to join us here at 2:30. For all of you individuals that like to partake a little bit, I will not call you degenerate gamblers, but I'll call you partake. And just kind of get the over-under in reference to both these teams can score and score a lot. So are we going to see 6-5 games? 4-3 games. We'll also catch up with Steve Peters, a former assistant coach with the Coyotes. He also helps with ESPN, get his thoughts on that. We'll catch up with him on Tuesday. These teams can both score. They can light up the lamp like no other team.
Yeah, and you mentioned both can score quick, too. I remember Edmonton, the first game, they were up 3-0, and Dallas came back and won that game 5-3. And then since then, both teams, the Panthers, they were down 3-0 against the Canes, and within a matter of 30 seconds, they scored 2 goals. So to your point, Manuch, I think the over-under for the first game at least has got to be 9.5 goals.
It might be.
It sounds insane to say, but it's going to be a fun series watching Edmonton, and it's cool to see what Connor McDavid said last year, a lot of emotions of a Canada team coming back to the Stanley Cup, and now it's status quo because they're back in it.
Connor, let's skip down to Pat Mahomes because this is interesting. We've been talking about this Olympic flag football team, which will be going in the 2028 Olympics. Long story short, he's my quarterback if he's going to play, but Pat Mahomes is saying he's not interested.
Yeah, I know it's awesome, honestly, just to be able to showcase the NFL to the whole world through flag football. But I'll probably leave that to the younger guys. I'll be a little old by the time that thing comes around.
I can't imagine him being as competitive as he is. Maybe he has another 2 Super Bowl rings by that time. Maybe his last thing to conquer, it would be for me, is to go get a gold medal in the Olympics as a quarterback. I got the Super Bowl rings. If I can go get that gold medal, I'd be all over this.
But Manuch, one, he's got a little beer belly on him, so I know he likes to enjoy his off season, get some beer, and go play some golf. But Pat Mahomes doesn't care about a gold medal. He wants to win multiple Super Bowls, get his body right. But yeah, it would be cool to see him in that setting. But I do think too for flag football, I think a Jaden Daniels, I think a Lamar Jackson, even what you want to say about Kyler Murray, those kind of dual threat runners, because you got to mention too in the flag football, there is a rusher coming at you too. So I think Mahomes, and I'm sure the Kansas City Chiefs, if they have to have one person from each NFL team represent for the Olympics, he's not the guy for him.
Coming up, we take a look at what's being worked on the most throughout the NFC West, and are the goals for the Cardinals in the OTAs going to be something they can rely on? But first, here's Connor with our Wright Toyota ESPN 620 right here on Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B, live from Wright Toyota on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2.
It's time for your Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B's Right Toyota ESPN 620 update. I'm Connor Collins. It's a big night for Arizona sports as the Diamondbacks open a 3-game series against the Washington Nationals at Chase Field. Merrill Kelly set to take the mound with a record of 5-2 and a 3.52 ERA, going up against Jake Irvin, who's been playing pretty good baseball as of late. He's got a 4-1 record and a 3.42 ERA. Arizona aims to build momentum after snapping a 5-game skid, and you can catch that first pitch at 98.7 FM Arizona Sports at 6:40 p.m. Meanwhile, in Tempe, the Cardinals wrapped up OTAs with quarterback Kyler Murray fully participating, and second-year wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. is turning heads, having added more muscle in the offseason and showing off strong chemistry with Murray. This update is brought to you by Right Toyota, where they've got the right deal for everyone. Right on the corner, right on the price. Right Toyota in Scottsdale.
And then the Arizona Cardinals, and now part of the broadcast team. You hear each and every Sunday as the Arizona Cardinals get ready to kick off another season. Jax, I got to tell you, you look at all the things going on over there at the complex. Third year for Jonathan Gannon and Monty Austinford. Seems as though everybody's pretty much on the same page. Mandatory mini camp will start next week, which means everybody needs to be there. And then after that, I think they have a week or 2 weeks of that. Then there's a break before they get back for training camp.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a different mindset, a different culture in year 3. And we always talk about different organizations, a year 3 being that next jump. And what you're hearing from Gannon, what you're hearing from all these players, it's the same mission that we're urgent right now to win and the consistency and stay healthy. And there's some notable names that are missing this period, including Josh Sweat, Froholt, the center, Dalvin Tomlinson, Kelvin Beachum, and Calais Campbell. But that doesn't really matter, right? Those are all veteran guys that have been around forever. It's the mandatory weekend next week. And then guys like Walter Nolan and Jonah Williams are off to the side, still working with the organization. But listening to the interviews, talking about with Jonathan Gannon and him talking about this team, all the guys that are supposed to be there, they've known, which I think is a good sign. You don't have any confrontations with contract negotiations we've seen in the past with Budda Baker or Kyler Murray. None of that's happening. It's a culture set with Jonathan Gannon and with Monty Austinford, and these are the guys that are supposed to be there. And I think it's cool. You mentioned yesterday that Kyler Murray, he does need to be there. He does need to show that he's a leader on this team, and I think him being there, whereas the old regime, he'd probably get away with it, and they probably have a phone break during the middle of practice with Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim. Things are starting to move in the right direction.
Yeah, I think from the Arizona Cardinals standpoint here, and I think what you try to do, and I remember when we would show up for mini camps. We didn't have the OTAs, we didn't have the off season or the off season organized team activities. It was pretty much here's the rookie mini camp, and for us quarterbacks, at least in Buffalo, and I was in Green Bay as well too. We showed up for that, and then we had the veteran mini camp combo. So we were there a good 2 weeks as a quarterbacks to pretty much get reacclimated. To go through all the plays that we're going to run through pretty much the entire year. If there's any tweaks or finer nuances we've added to the offense, we'd be there for that. But it was getting the entire team together over that 2 week period to just get you back in football thought process, to get you working out a little bit. But that didn't come without some kind of testing. I'll never forget this. We came back, we'd have some kind of physical conditioning in place. And some of that physical conditioning was, whether it be you running 1040s, making sure that you had your weights. Matter of fact, what we had was like a mini combine. You had to have you had to run 1040s, and you could only be slower than 4/10 of your time. Because we were in 1040s, you'd run a 40, 10-second rest, then come back and do that 10 times. And your test was, you could not be any slower than 4/10 of your best time. And then we would do like the bench press. We had the squats. We had things we had to measure so the Bills or the Packers, whoever I was playing with, could measure that you're working out and that you're staying dialed in and you're getting ready for a season when you have these mini camps in May, knowing you got June in order to get ready for July camp. And that was kind of their way of, hey, look, you're getting paid for this. This is a profession. We don't want you going home and just hanging out for 2 or 3 months and then coming back and trying to get in shape at camp. They wanted you in shape. They wanted you dialed in at that mini camp just to make sure that you're ready to go.
I want to go back to some of that OTA sound, Connor, if that's all good with you. The voices from the Valley we did earlier. We did miss on some that we didn't touch earlier. In this first one, head coach Jonathan Gannon talking about needing all the 2024 NFL draft class as they take a big leap from year 1 to year 2 to step up big this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think all of them.
Okay.
I think we need all of them to make that jump. And why I say that is if you have a jersey on game day, you have to serve a purpose and you have to help the team win. So what I'm talking, it doesn't matter, Marvin playing 65 plays, Max Melton playing, a game, Max Melton playing, let's call it 35 a game. Like if he's going to play more, he's got to be ready to take the jump. If D-Rob's going to play more, if Zay Weaver, if Tip's going to, all those guys, right? I'm listing off the guys, Isaiah Adams, probably he's competing to be a full-time starter at guard, not just plug and play he's got to make the jump if we want to go where we want to go. So I'm counting on all of them and they need to, all of them.
I love that. It's called accountability. It's time to grow up, be ready to go, and be that guy. And I think that in year 3 for Monty Austinford as a general manager and for Jonathan Gannon as your head coach, they're expected to take the next step, right? So they're expecting their players, whether you're a rookie or you've been there 1 year or 2 years, or you've been there all 3 years as part of the Jonathan Gannon regime and Monty Ossenfort regime, guess what? You're not going to spot play. And any of those defensive guys he mentioned right there, we may not rotate you. We may start you. You got to be ready to go the entire game. All right, Adams, you're going to be a right guard. You got to be ready to go the entire game. So what he's saying is, hey, look, all hands on deck. We're not gonna spoon feed you anymore. We're not gonna crawl, walk, and run. They expect everybody to be running and ready, willing, and able to go from the get-go. And I think that's a sign I hear there from Jonathan Gannon to hear that, hey, look, guys, all right, we're done looking at the syllabus. We've been through the first 10 chapters. We got 4 more chapters to get this to the playoffs. And that's what I think I hear him saying. Also, some of the guys that we were talking about a little earlier. Carl, let's go to the Trey McBride soundbite. He's talking about, the consistency, his health have been the big keys, are going to have to be the big keys for this 2025 season.
I think, most importantly, just consistency. Obviously, keeping our guys healthy. I think our team is, very strong. We have everything we need to do to be successful. And I think we just stay on the right track, stay healthy, and our team can be really, really good.
And I agree with that. And thanks to Burns and Gamble, who interviewed these guys yesterday out there at the complex. Trey McBride is one of those guys going into his 4th year now.
He's so good.
He's talented.
He's so good.
He's gifted. He's talented. Now, I think they might have just said, not that they wrote it in his contract, I would think, that you may want to curtail the hurdling because sooner or later that'll catch up to you. I get it. It's very athletic. It's kind of a thing now. And I think that you want to stay grounded. So if you see somebody, because if somebody goes high and you're hurdling and you hit them in an area that might be detrimental to your health, I think you just got to be very careful with that. But I think what Trey McBride realizes, the guys that have been there going into this 3rd year for Jonathan Gannon, is they have to understand that they are looking to take this to the next level. Not just, 8 wins, not just get 10 wins. They're talking about going to the playoffs. You have to have that desire to go to the playoffs if you're going to be this team.
It's crazy, too, looking back on Trey McBride. He's the only one on this team from the 2022 NFL draft. That was just 3 years ago. That kind of tells you the different regime from that class where he's the only one versus I'm looking back at 2023. You talk about the guys taking a big jump from year 1 to year 2. Paris Johnson Jr., B.J. Ojolari, Garrett Williams, Michael Wilson, all contributors to this team that are still on the roster just 2 years later, going to make that big jump from year 2 to year 3. So I think it's cool that we're seeing the comparisons from regimes. We're seeing a guy in Jonathan Gannon that he's going to play his young guys. They're going to get a lot of reps and contribution. I think that's important. Yeah. You see the Chiefs do that. You see the Eagles do that. You see the Lions. They want to have guys that they draft play in immediately in contributions quickly because, those are the additions that you made on your roster. So I think it's cool to see this kind of regime get some production early from these young players.
Well, and you talk about the additions, but the lack of off-season moves by this Arizona Cardinals team is creating a sense of urgency. Here's the captain himself, running back James Conner, talking about the pressure of this offense because of those lack of off-season moves.
I believe so, yeah. And it's up to us to own up to that responsibility and understand it. That we was heavy defense during the draft and free agency and whatnot. So, telling the guys who we have in the locker room right now is it's our job to get the ball in the end zone with the group that we got right now. So we feel that responsibility and the pressure is good for us. So we're enjoying it. Why not be right now? The time is now. We got talented roster right now. We added talented players to it. So I'm ready. We ain't doing this forever. I sure enough ain't, doing it forever. So sooner the better. We'll put it like that. Yeah, we just, we got to win the day. That's what win stands for. What's important now. And so this was the first day back. We put helmets on. We know what's coming. We know what's at stake and all that. But if we don't win today, we don't got a chance. So we just taking it one day at a time.
Well, and a lot of folks, I think that's why we're spending a lot of time on this, is because this really, your OTAs and your minicamp kind of set the tone, Jax. Sets the tone in the season. Everybody showing up. Everybody paying attention. In the locker room as far as the new plays, guys getting in shape, guys being around Guys pretty much getting their work in and going about. There's an attitude, and I'll never forget this. Going into my second year in Buffalo, 1980, and we won the AFC East in 1980. So we were talking about the OTAs about a week ago that they're going to be happening this week. And I thought back of that year before, that early May, before that season, we win the AFC East. And the tone was set with the veterans of, okay, guys, it's time to get back to playoffs. We were 7-9 the year before. That year in 80, we were 11-5, win the AFC East. But there was a vibe with the veterans, and just kind of trickled down that, hey, this is the time to do it. Phil Filippiano had joined us. Lawrence McCutcheon had joined us. Phil was an outstanding linebacker with the Super Bowl Oakland Raiders. Lawrence McCutcheon was with the LA Rams. He'd been in the playoffs. So the guys that the Bills brought in, the veterans, were guys that knew how to win, were guys that had won, and guys have gone to the next level. So with the experience we had, and with the youth and the draft choices, that blend, there was that vibe, that tone was set at the mini camps, which I think you hear James Conner in that last soundbite pretty much say it. Hey guys, it's go time. We don't have much time with this roster that they have on the offense and the roster they have on defense.
I'm intrigued to see how much of a vocal leader Josh Sweat will be on this defense. I mean, this guy just won the Super Bowl last year. He knows what it's going to take. Them bringing on Dalvin Tomlinson and Calais Campbell, a bunch of veterans, to your point about the veterans you had when you played for the Bills. A lot of excitement. One more clip here before we go to break. Connor, I want to go to Trey Benson. He's confident that he'll be involved in the offense this year. I think this could be big for the Arizona Cardinals if they can get a 1-2 punch out of both James Conner and Trey Benson.
This year I'm looking for to be, 1-2 punch. Even though he's getting older, but he's getting better though.
You guys are clear to toss whenever.
He's getting better, so hopefully he has a better season last year. Hopefully I just feed off him and continue to help him out this year.
I think it'd be huge if they can get him. If you have two running backs, we've seen this offense before when it was David Johnson and Chase Edmonds, or Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds. Like you're talking about Drew Petzing. If you could have another weapon to have two running backs on a consistent basis, and then when you're not have to be worried when Connor gets hurt, there's going to be a massive drop-off, and you got to ask more for Kyler Murray to run the football. If you can have Trey Benson have that breakout year, I think it's going to be massive for this team.
This segment is courtesy of Wright Toyota, the right price, the right selection, and always the right dealership located in Scottsdale on Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard and 78th Street. Wright Toyota has the right deal for everyone. And right now, check out their full inventory, pre-owned certified vehicles under $15,000 and online at wrighttoyota.com. That's wrighttoyota.com. Well, what's on tap tonight? Crack open a cold one, Dos Equis, and keep it right here locked in. It's all coming up next on Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B.
about it when I see you again. We've come a long
Yeah, just let that marinate, buddy.
from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
I think for him, he kind of likes playing those younger talent guys. And it's like with me coming into this business, right? 2.5 years ago, I came on the radio, didn't have a lot of experience. I was kind of thrown in the fire and learned on the go.
Took your floaties off.
Took my floaties off and got experience to where I am today before I was 2.5 years ago.
That is the young Jackson Groff, our fine producer, social media guy, everything.
Not an intern anymore.
Not an intern anymore. He actually graduated. That is our Interact Need a Check. Make one call. That's all. 602-977-1900. And always online at learnerroad.com. Free consultation. They can help. Again, one call. That's all. 602-977-1900. Our Learner Road one call. That's all. Jackson Groff talking about how he came in just a couple, 2.5 short years ago. Rock gave him about 9,000 different things to do and to get him done within 3 hours. And you've done a great job doing that, Jax. But before we send you off, let's get to clean up a couple things here before we give you some more love. Let's get to What's on Tap. It's brought to you by the Orangedale Lounge Mug Club. Your VIP pass to Dive Bar Greatness in North Scottsdale. The Orangedale Lounge opens up in just a few weeks. And right now, you can lock in your Mug Club membership for just $200 and an early bird special. Get your 22-ounce mug, exclusive drink deals, and access to members-only events all year long. Spots are limited, so grab your mug before the doors open. Ask your bartender or visit orangedalelounge.com. That's orangedalelounge.com today. Cheap drinks, chill vibes, dive in, and with the OD Mug Club. So what's on tap? Tonight, 98.7, our sister station. It all starts at 6 o'clock. It's the D-backs pregame show. 6:40 first pitch. D-backs taking on the Nationals. Tomorrow night at 6:30 again on 98.7, the D-backs pregame show. 7:10 the first pitch. The D-backs will take on the Nationals. And then on Sunday, the getaway day, also 98.7. 12:30 the D-backs pregame. And then 1:10 the D-backs versus the Nationals. All right, Jax, we'll give you one more assignment. Our State 40 Roofing question of the day.
Ooh, big load here.
For a free quote, repair, or new install, head to state40roofing.com.
Yeah, just go to @Roc and Manuch on Twitter with Zach Gallen's pitching woes of late and up for an extension after this year. What should the Diamondbacks do? Trade him or keep/pay the extension? The results are in. 66.7% voted. Trade him.
Ooh. And then, the 33% said
pay the extension and keep.
So I will say
you guys have persuaded me. I would probably say trade him, but you know more baseball than I would, so I would want your opinion.
I think right now, what they've invested in him, I think he's $13.5 million right now. I think that they're going to give him at least this month of June to get his wrongs righted, to get back on track, as I like to say. Because you got to remember this. The World Series year, he struggled there for a while. And then the last 4 or 5 starts, he pitched very well. And he pitched very well in the World Series as well. Last year, same kind of thing. Struggled, but pitched well at the end of the year, even though they missed the playoffs by 1 game. So I think that you've got to give him the month of June to see where he's at, because he's got to really, and be more consistent with that. Get some run support, obviously. And then with the trade deadline in, early July or right around the All-Star break, I think at that time, can you give him an evaluation whether he gets it or doesn't get it? So I'm going to go with the 33%. I would say go ahead and keep him. Let me put it this way. I would say after that month of June, that might be another good question. But right now, I just say keep him. Pay the extension unless he proves otherwise.
So the D-backs this weekend, 2-1, 3-0 would be happy. 1-2 or 0-3 would be panic mode. Is that what your kind of expectations are for this series? Because for me, at 2-1, if we could take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, I think that's a positive direction for the Diamondbacks.
I really believe this team, who's lost 8 out of the last 11, 7 out of the last 8, they got to win the series. You've got to win 2 out of 3. Number one, if you get swept, and they win the series, I would going into Atlanta next week and then going to Cincinnati. So you got Atlanta on the road next week and Cincinnati on the road next week. I would say this team is struggling in dire straits. And not that you can't get healthy. Again, go on the road and let's say you win 7 out of 10, which, by the way, the Nationals have won 7 out of the last 10. They've won the last 2 in a row. They've scored, 18 runs in 2 games, as you were talking about that a little bit earlier. So I think this is a really with Merrill Kelly on the mound tonight. And I want to see who's on the mound tomorrow. I think it might be.
I think it's Font tomorrow.
It's Font, yeah. Font's on the mound tomorrow night. And then Sunday you got Burns. You need to win this series because you got 3 guys. And then Ryan Nelson will be the next on Tuesday. They'll have Monday off. And then it'll be Nelson, Gallen, Kelly, Font. So you've got the only bump in the road right now is Zach Gallen when I look at those starters and that starting rotation. So those are some of the things. So they've got to get back on track. And as far as all things like that, the month of June will be the tall-tale sign whether this team is going to vie for a wild card because there are 7 games out of the wild card and also 7 games back out of the LA Dodgers. Okay, so we're saying goodbye to, I should say, till next time for Jax. He's moving on.
Still going to be here.
Short timer. It's going to the nerve to go get a regular full-time job. I mean, Jax, this is Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B. You know how privileged and honored you've been the last 2.5 years. People are knocking the door down.
I know.
To have your spot. But anyways, hey, best of luck to you. Really appreciate you doing all the hard work you had. Being that ex-football player, we could see it in you, prepped, ready to go, and all things good to you. So where are you going? So
yeah, no, I appreciate you, Roc. 2 years ago, 10 months, I actually met him at Wright Toyota. It's funny they gave me the address to Wright Toyota. I was so confused because I was like, I'm signing up for a radio job, but I'm meeting at a car dealership. It's like I do not understand this. But then obviously I learned your guys' model and what you guys do, and took a chance on me out of college through a mutual friend. Didn't have much experience with streaming or social media, and kind of grew that every day. But never took this job for granted. Definitely learned all the broadcasting 101 from this guy and from Jimmy B and Roc and stuff like that. But I know I'll be around. I'm still living in Scottsdale. I'll be remote job. I'll be working at The Volume, which is I'm blessed to work at Colin Coward's digital media company. So I'll be producing there, and then I'll be on the show every once in a while during college football season. So I'll be covering NFL and college, but I'll still be here. I'll be in Scottsdale. So I'll be tuning in, maybe show up once in a while to a Twin Peaks to try to get some free food from you or something.
Why wouldn't you? All right. So
exactly.
You got, okay, so I'm going to give you a little word association here.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. So, all right. So Roc.
Word associate. One word to describe
One word.
I'm gonna say talented because I feel like a lot of people don't know how much he puts into the lineup and show. I'm gonna say talented because of the amount of prep work and different angles and stuff that he puts in there.
All right. Jimmy B.
Hilarious. So funny. Random. Scatterbrained would probably be the word I'd say for him. Scatterbrained him.
All right. Connor.
Connor, Connor, one word. I want to say large, but I don't want to say large because of how big he is, but I'll say large, like personality.
Large in life.
Large in life, willing to do things and just kind of go with the flow with the show. And he's only been here for a couple of months, but it seems like he's been here a lot.
All right,
longer.
Manuch.
I'm going to say over-prepared. check, double check. But I'm also going to say caring too, Manuch. I appreciate you. You care for people, whether that's Brock or Tyler Shuck. Like if Manuch knows you, he rides with you till the day of death or whatever. So no, I'm grateful, appreciative of the show, and I'm excited to see what you guys do this season.
All right, Connor, any last words for Jax as he heads off to go get a damn real job for crying out loud?
Yeah, get the hell out of here. Let me do my work, man. I'm just kidding. You know I love you, Jax. We'll be hanging out down the pipeline, buddy.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So if you ever want to talk Dallas Cowboys, give Connor a holler.
Oh, gosh.
Because I'm sure when the Cowboys and Cardinals play, we will be
he knows I'll talk college with him all day.
College, Cowboys, all the above. But, Jax, best of luck to you, man. Go get it done. We appreciate it. We love you.
30 seconds.
We hope you learned enough to go out there and spread your wings and just make sure you give Roc, Manuch, and Jimmy B all the love that you can.
100%.
In that standpoint. Hey, I want to give all the folks out here at Ride Toyota special thanks for having us. We know you have a lot of choices. We appreciate you tuning in. Connor, great job. Jax, outstanding job. And for all of you out there, we appreciate it. I'm Dan Manucci. It's been Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B, as we listen to you and tune into you every day from 1 to 4. Have a great weekend, everybody.